Hey guys. This is part 7 of What If Naruto Was Raised by the Third Raikage. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 23, The Rasengan. Raisin, A and Darui were seated on one side of the table whilst Jiraiya was sitting on the other side. The tension in the air was so thick that it would take one of Asuma's chakra blades being channeled with wind to a fine point to cut through. There is an organization, made completely of S-rank missing nin, after the Bju, or more specifically the Jinchuuriki, finally spoke as grave looks were shared amongst themselves. Jiraiya nodded solemnly. I have heard rumors of it, nothing concrete, but a few days ago I received several reports from trustworthy contacts that this isn't some rumor made up by drunken brawlers, this is the real deal. Raisin pressed his hands against the oak table, making it crack and leaving imprints of his massive hands. How long until they try to capture them? 3 years, Jiraiya said bluntly. But I believe that they are already sending feelers to all the villages that contain Bju. No doubt they want to know the strengths and weaknesses of each area. It'll make capturing a Jinchuuriki easier. Gritted his teeth, damn it. He cursed, why do they want the Bju? I don't know. But a criminal organization with every single Bju under their control is something no one wants. I doubt they want to end world hunger or save the orphans. Jiraiya said. Darui sighed. Damn, you were right on not having any of the genin or being in this meeting. I don't want to freak him out, not a dull meeting. Jiraiya sighed slightly, that it is. But we will have to tell them soon, they deserve to know that they're going to be hunted, by S-rank criminals no less. I won't let anyone touch my children. Raisin growled, those bastards have a thing coming to them if they think they can just waltz into my village and snatch my kids from me. I know you want, but I don't think they would be foolish to attack one of the 5 great villages. They work in a group of pairs, making it easier to take down a single opponent, Jinchuuriki or not, Jiraiya spoke. Do you know who is in the organization? It'll help us if we know their jutsu and weaknesses, not to mention what this organization is called and how we know it's them, Darui asked. Sadly I don't know who is in it, though I do know that Orochimaru used to be a member before he left to continue his dream to use all jutsu. The bastard never could stay in one place. They can be seen wearing black cloaks with red clouds on them. Aside as he struggled to calm down, Kumo doesn't have any S-rank missing ninja. We always take out any deserters before they can get past the border. The only S-rank ninja that managed to evade us were the Gold and Silver brothers, but they've been dead for decades. Jiraiya nodded. Konoha only has one S-rank missing ninja, Itachi Uchiha, and according to my spies he seems to have already joined a village, he said as he glared softly at the 3 men. Raisin shrugged. The boy was a great addition to our village, but, he glared heavily at the man and Ki was laced in the air. If you tell anyone or try to hurt him I'll kill you myself. The kid has already gone through enough shit in his life, he doesn't need you adding in anymore. And that is why I haven't told anyone. Sensei told me what really happened that night. He was happy to learn that Itachi had joined another village. He wanted Itachi to find some sort of happiness after what he had to do. Jiraiya defended himself. So that leaves Tsunade, Kirigakure, Iwagakure, and any notable missing ninja from smaller countries, Darui said, though we don't know if all of them are in the organization. Damn, why can't this search be dull? Is this one of the reasons why you want En to come with you to find the slug princess? Raisin questioned the Sannin. Yes, if they try to grab him they'll have to go through me and I doubt En will allow himself to get kidnapped without trying to maim them and scarring the landscape, Jiraiya said where everyone chuckled at that. This is also the perfect chance to teach him some more jutsu. I want En to learn the Rasengan. They all looked at the Toad Sage with surprise. They knew it was En's birthright to learn one of his father's famed techniques, but they had assumed it was until he was older. Raisin laughed. The boy won't stop to sleep or eat until he has it down and mastered. I laughed as well. I remember when he was finishing the final stage of the Right and No Yoroi, he didn't sleep for an entire week. Had to pretty much force-fed him. The second he finished the technique the brat passed out. He was asleep for 2 days. Darui chuckled. That sounds like En. We're going to leave tomorrow morning. We can both say goodbye to one another while En goes with you and we go home. I don't feel right being away from the cloud, especially with these Akatsuki bastards trying to figure out how to infiltrate it. We'll be able to keep an eye on B and Yujito. No one would attack all of us. Raisin said, when you find Tsunade and have her become Hokage you can bring En back home. I'll step up their training, Darui offered. We need to get them ready for the 3 years. Ko will no doubt want to help his teammates. They've gotten a lot closer since Wave. Their teamwork is top-notch. Maybe in the future they may become the equivalent of the Sannin. He finished with a smile. Jiraiya chuckled. Well, I'm afraid they'll have to train more to beat us. I won't be overthrown by a couple of brats. Let's all go to bed. We have a long day of traveling tomorrow. Everyone nodded their heads and they each went to bed. The next morning, En was finishing packing all of his stuff in a backpack. He made sure to not forget anything as this would be the last time he would be in Konoha for a good long while. He shouldered his pack and started to head towards the gates where everyone was. All of a sudden 2 people stepped in front of him. Lee-san, Guy-san? En questioned as he looked at the clones. What's up? Guy beamed at the boy. Lee was no longer on crutches and looked in good health. We wanted to thank you for your most youthful actions during the most unyouthful invasion, Guy said, and we wanted to give you a gift. You are my eternal rival En. Lee yelled as his eyes turned into flames. One day we shall fight to show off our flames of youth. Guy reached for something in his pocket before holding it out for En, his other hand being in a thumbs up. Lee was mirroring his sensei's actions, both beaming at the blonde whose eyebrows widened when he saw what it was before grinning. Where's En? Ko asked his female teammate as they all waited at the front gates. Yujito shrugged. Don't ask me, the idiot probably got lost. Hey guys. They all looked to see En running towards them. All of their jaws dropped to the ground. I think I may faint, Yujito muttered as she beheld her best friend. There was En with his usual goofy grin in place, his 7 swords gleaming on his back, his red sunglasses shining, and wearing a dark green spandex suit. En was beaming at them. To their horror he gave them all a thumbs up, his smile shining like Guy's did. Gods no, Yujito whispered in horror. What's up, fools? En greeted, making a peace sign. A turn to his father. Can I kill him? He asked the older man who whacked A on the head. Jiraiya appeared before them with a smile on his face, which immediately left his features. As he turned ashen, he then promptly fainted when he saw En and his new get-up. Ko, hold him down, Yujito said where Ko looked at her in slight confusion. There was a flash of light in the air and suddenly En's green spandex was cut off of him, leaving him with nothing but bright neon orange boxers. Yujito-chan. En whined, why'd you do that for? If I ever see you wearing that spandex again I will cut you into shreds. Not just the spandex, Yujito said and gave En the don't fuck with me look, and gulped and nodded his head. Jiraiya woke up and the rest of the time went on smoothly, and said goodbye to his family and friends. Hopefully they would see each other in a month's time. The two headed down the road that would lead them to Tsunade's last known whereabouts. When the day was nearly over they reached a small town that had a festival going on. A pervy sage and said, ignoring the man's face twitch at the nickname, why is there a festival going on? He asked as he saw a bunch of kids screaming in delight as they ran around with sparklers while the adults were chatting with one another or eating at the various food stalls. It's the Fire Festival. It's always celebrated halfway through the summer, and it's to celebrate the land of fire and Konohagakure. Civilians have always had a love for celebrations, so they made a holiday where people celebrate the history of the land of fire along with the past Hokage, Jiraiya explained, and nodded. As he looked at the various food stalls, each seemed to have the name fire in it, or at least something remotely close to the name. He also noticed you could get novelty items on the past Hokage. He saw a replica of his father's Hiroshin kunai, second's unique headband, along with some cheap replicas of the first's red armor. We don't have this at home, though I guess it wouldn't make sense if we celebrated the glory of Konohagakure and the Hokage in Kumogakure. We already have badass Kage, thank you very much, and said matter-of-factly. Jiraiya laughed. No one could become a Kage if they weren't a badass. Let's stay here for the night. No sense continuing on with the day almost gone, and we have to sleep on the hard ground. And nodded his head. They went to a nice-looking hotel where they asked the lady at the front desk for a room. When she saw En, she immediately blushed, especially when she saw his whisker marks, which she deemed adorable. En for the most part was extremely confused while Jiraiya was watching the scene with a grin. Well, looks like I found a jackpot in this kid. I can pick up more women with him. Minato, you would be so proud if you knew your son was a chick magnet. The two got a nice room, though Jiraiya made En sleep on the floor, which made En grumble, but he didn't complain, especially if Jiraiya was going to teach him cool jutsu. I'm going to the festival, En said as he grabbed some money from his bag. Just cause I'm from Cloud doesn't mean I can't go. Just don't get into any fights, Jiraiya called to the blonde who left. Jiraiya shook his head in amusement before he went to his manuscript for his next Ika novel. Let me think, Jiraiya thought as he tried to think of a new plot for his next novel. He smirked as he quickly wrote the title. Ika, Love in the Clouds. He giggled as he made up the summary. The son of a notable shinobi and a powerful shinobi himself, struggles to find his soul mate. With his dashing looks he could have any women he wants, but he seems to have his eyes stuck on the blonde Yugi, a confident Quinochi who doesn't put up with his antics. Soon enough these two fall for each other hard, as well as nights of intense passion and love. Jiraiya nodded to himself. Nailed it, he thought with a grin, and was walking around the fair with a smile on his face. He noticed a stall with kunai and targets. He quickly took off his hyatate and stashed it in his pocket. The vendor was leaning on the table with a bored look. He smirked when he saw some kid looking at his stall. The boy was large and muscular, but the vendor doubted he could even get the kunai near the target. The vendor's expression was priceless when every single target, including the small moving targets, all got bull's eyes. And chuckled as he got a gigantic fox. He kind of looks like you, Kyuubi? Are you comparing me to a fluffy fox? Kyuubi asked in disbelief. I am the Nine Tails. I can destroy mountains on a whim. I am not fluffy. Well, with that happy attitude you are, and said with an internal smirk. He saw a kid looking at his huge fox with awe and jealousy. He gave the prize to the shocked Joy, who hugged the life out of the animal, before thanking the Kumo genin with tears of joy, and smiled as he walked through the festival, sampling all types of food. Before looking up at the full moon, he sighed as he headed back to the hotel. The sooner he found Tsunade, the sooner he could go home. That day, in the land of lightning, Kakuzu and Haiden had stopped. The reason for this was because they had suddenly found themselves surrounded by an entire patrol of Storm Nin. Damn it, we never even got there! Haiden exclaimed before he smirked deviously. He pointed his scythe at the impassive Kumogakure ninja. Be honored! Your souls will be given to Lord Jashin. You are trespassing on our lands. A storm with a raptor mask spoke icily. TCH, like we give a shit! Haiden yelled while Kakuzu remained impassive. They had discarded their straw hats, so now you could see their appearances. Haiden, despite looking like he was in his early 20s, had silver-gray hair that was slicked backwards. He was slightly tan as well. His purple eyes were lit up with giddiness as he saw the possible sacrifices. His Yugakure hyatate, 3 lines that were slightly vertical, was wrapped around his neck. Kakuzu's tan face was hidden with a gray mouth mask. Not unlike Kakashi's, he wore a white hood, and his Takigakure hyatate placed on his forehead. Kakuzu's bright, almost neon green eyes glowed as he looked at the storm ninja with an almost bored expression. Inside his head he was calculating on how long it would take to take these guys down, along with making sure they don't give away their identities, as well as wondering if any of these guys had any bounties. Oi, Kakuzu! Haiden yelled at his partner. Help me out here, and don't even try thinking if any of these bastards have any bounties. Haiden, Kakuzu thought in annoyance, we were to try and make sure they didn't find out who we were, not to scream to the heavens. Idiot, what business do you have with us? Rabbit asked the two, his hand on his sword. Haiden snorted. Kakuzu, let's just kill these guys. For once, I agree with you, Kakuzu stated as he put his right hand behind his back, slowly channeling chakra in it. Black wires replaced his hands as they stealthily went through the ground, the storm not being able to see it. The storm ninja got ready for the fight that was to come. They heard a rumbling underneath them and barely had time to look down as thick coils of black wire sprang from the ground, capturing one of the storm ninja, who screamed in pain as the wire went through his body until he hung limply on the wires. The storm leader gritted his teeth. He formed a couple hand seals, right on, lightning strike. The next day, and sighed as he meditated on the floor of the hotel room. Jiraiya had gone somewhere, and he was stuck in the room. He decided he may as well train. He had several pebbles of different sizes on random parts of his body. He was using his chakra to keep the pebbles from falling off, and he also had to make the pebbles move around. Jiraiya was enjoying a nice cup of sake. He immediately noticed an auburn-haired girl staring at him from across the bar. When she realized he had caught her staring, she looked away, a soft blush on her face. Jiraiya grinned perversely. He got up from his chair and immediately appeared in the chair next to her. Hello, my dear, he greeted with a smile. The girl blushed scarlet. Hello yourself, she said with a small flirty grin. Jiraiya downed his cup of sake in one gulp. He grinned perversely as they both started to flirt. Outside the door of the hotel, 2 figures stood there. One was extremely tall and muscular, his unique sword on his back. The other shorter man stood by him, his pink eyes staring at the door. Their Akatsuki robes were being worn by the two. The tall one looked at his companion with a smirk that a lion had when the prey had nowhere to go. Seems this is the place. He knocked on the door, and perked his head up at the noise. With a couple of grumbles he walked over to the door and opened it. His eyes widened when he saw the giant of the man grinning at him with a predatory smirk. He noticed his skin was light blue while a man around the height as him was looking at him with creepy pink eyes, his mouth covered in bandages. So you're the Kyuubi Jinchuuriki, the tall man said, making warning bells ring in En's head. You're going to come with us. And took one long blank stare at the two before he screeched, rapists, and quickly shut the door on them. He locked the door for good measure as well. The blue man looked at the pale man before shrugging. He swung his massive sword downwards on the door, making it break down into rubble, and looked at the sword with shock. He backed away as he noticed the sword seemed to be squirming and clacking in some sort of weird language. It wasn't a question, the pale man said, his pink eyes staring at the blonde with aloofness. You're coming with us. Then all of a sudden Jiraiya burst through a wall. The lady he had been flirting with passed out on his shoulder. He struck a pose as he saw the two. I'm afraid you won't get near him, for I am the gallant Jiraiya, the toad sage of Miyabuku. He finished his pose with a smirk. It's been a long time. Hasn't it, Jiraiya? The shorted man with the high-collared robe questioned softly as he turned to face the white-haired man. Jiraiya's smile fell from his face, shock and horror on his face. Hiriko? He asked in a whisper, how is this possible? You died. You died in the Third Shinobi War. Hiriko chuckled softly. I'm afraid that you're wrong, seeing as I'm right here, alive and well. So you joined Akatsuki, Jiraiya stated as he looked at his former childhood friend. He could see no past resemblance of the shy little kid that always adored him, Orochimaru, and Tsunade. All he saw were the eyes of a madman, the eyes of a killer. Kisame, Hiriko spoke softly to the giant man, now known as Kisame. We should go, no sense staying here if Jiraiya is here. TCH, Kisame lifted his sword on his shoulder. And here I was ready for a fight. You owe me for this one, Hiriko. Don't think I'll just let you waltz on out of here, Jiraiya said, his face serious. He formed several hand seals, summoning, toad mouth bind. Pink flesh formed around the walls, ceiling, and floor. Kisame and Hiriko found the flesh forming around their legs, trapping them. Kisame glanced down at the flesh slowly creeping up his legs. With a powerful swing he managed to gash the flesh, letting his legs free. He did the same thing with Hiriko before quickly going through hand seals, Suetun, water shark bullet jutsu. A large glowing blue shark made of water appeared. Kisame grabbed a fin as did Hiriko. The shark shot forward, managing to break through the wall before the flesh covered it. And Jiraiya stood there. So, and said as he looked at the perv. Jiraiya gulped and paled slightly when he could practically feel the glare being sent to him. He idly wondered why his red sunglasses hadn't melted from the fiery gaze. You going to tell me what the hell was that? Fuck, was all Jiraiya could think as the flesh left to go back to the summoning world, leaving him and En alone. And En looked like he really wanted some answers. After an hour or so with explanations, En was looking at the super pervert with shock. A whole bunch of S-rank criminals want to capture all the Jinchuuriki, he said in shock and disbelief and even a small hint of fear. And wasn't a coward, but if you had learned a whole bunch of Kage level shinobi was after to you, your brother, and best friend, well, you'd be dumb to not be nervous. This isn't good, Kyuubi muttered as he listened in on the conversation, his 9 great tails swinging in agitation. No shit, fuzzball, and replied to the strongest of the 9 Jur, and sighed. When is all this going to go down? When will they actually try to take us, to try and take the fox? He clenched his stomach, which underneath his jacket and shirt the seal that held Kyuubi was located in. He obviously didn't QBQ, nor any type of name that meant that they were friends or had even met. And knew that soon enough he would have to begin his Jinchuuriki training. While his dad had been hesitant seeing how everyone had failed and died, he knew the power of Abju and how it could help them against these bastards. The problem was trying to fail at it. They had been using the chakra for over 6 years, sort of hard to pretend you suck. Oh well, he'd pass that bridge later. And nodded his head as he pondered on his thoughts. He clenched his fists. Well, I guess I need to get stronger, eh? He asked with a grin. By the way, didn't you mention some sort of awesome jutsu? That was the way you bribed me into going on this mission when I could be back at home with my family, and chowing down on Granny Kicho's ramen. He started to drool at the thought of ramen. Even if he thought Ichiraku's was better, Granny Kicho had always been nice to the Jinchuuriki trio. Her restaurant had become a sort of hangout place for all of them. The fact that she could make enough food to feed a small army, or rather 3 hungry Bju containers, made it a very easy pick. Jiraiya smirked. Hey, he seems to have both of his parents' addiction to jutsu. He stood up. Of course, as a master ninja I know tons of awesome jutsu, but this one is pretty special. Jiraiya's shoes shined out of their room, and En could sense his chakra out in the forest. He disappeared in a pillar of red lightning and appeared by the Gamma Sannin. So what are you going to teach me, pervy sage? En asked with excitement, while Jiraiya twitched at the nickname. He let it go before he smiled warmly at his third pupil. I'm going to teach you one of your father's signature techniques. He noticed a large amount of interest coming from him, and he held up his hand, palm facing the sky. Slowly but surely a blue ball made of pure chakra formed. It made a soft humming sound as it spun. Rasengan! Jiraiya yelled as he slammed it into a large tree. He easily tore through the hardened bark like wet paper. The tree fell easily. and was watching with awe, Suga, and caught something that Jiraiya threw at him. He glanced down and saw that it was a water balloon. A pervy sage, what's this for? He asked, not really impressed with the red balloon. The Rasengan is made up of 3 steps. You already know of elemental manipulation. Your Raita no Yoroi is a perfect example of this. The Rasengan is taking chakra transformation to the highest level. While you have great chakra control for a Jinchuuriki, you can't make a Rasengan in 1 try. It took your father 3 years to complete it, and even with his help it took me 2 months to perfect it. Who knows, maybe you'll beat all of us. Jiraiya pointed at the balloon. The first step is rotation. First you must use your chakra to spin the water within the balloon, and make it pop. And nodded, he looked at the innocent-looking balloon held in his hand. His forehead scrunched in concentration, he channeled his chakra in the sphere, willing it the water to spin and pop. The balloon made a couple of slushing sounds as the water moved inside the thin balloon. It didn't pop. En's eyebrows narrowed as he added more chakra to make it spin faster. Still nothing happened. Jiraiya laughed warmly at En's scrunched-up face. He pulled out a gourd full of sake. I may as well get drunk off my ass. You'll be here for a while, he said with a wide grin as he drank from the gourd. A light blush reddening his face as the alcohol took its course. TCH, thanks for the help, pervert, and said with a twitching eye, before taking a calming breath and returned his attention to the stubborn balloon that wouldn't pop. The sun rose and sunk, and was still standing holding the balloon, and he was panting slightly. Jiraiya was passed out on his ass, reeking of sake. Come on, you stupid balloon, break! And yelled at the innocent-looking red balloon. The balloon merely moved along with the water, leaving an annoyed and angry En as he glared at it. Jiraiya woke up with a snort at En's yells of frustration. Did you pop it? He asked, not turning around to look at the boy, knowing full well he hadn't. Still, it was fun to tease the brat. He had a pretty short temper, and it always gave Jiraiya a small kick when he set him off. No, En grumbled. Jiraiya glanced up to see that the moon had risen, its crescent gleaming down on them. Come on, brat, let's head back to the hotel. En looked at him in disbelief. No way, I have to keep at it, otherwise I'll dash. Jiraiya grabbed the boy by the scruff of his jacket and dragged the protesting boy away from their temporary training grounds. The next morning En quickly gobbled down his breakfast of rice and fish. He also drank his protein shake in record time of 10 seconds. Before Jiraiya had even touched his chopsticks, En had already bolted out of the door. Jiraiya smiled at the boy. He's stubborn for sure. As En was rushing down the hallway, he noticed a water balloon rolling towards him. Before he could do anything, a black cat appeared. Hey kitty-chan, what are you doing that for? En asked as the cat patted the ball with a paw in one spot before hitting it in another spot. This continued on for several moments before the balloon popped, spraying the cat and making it screech as it rushed down the hallway, while En stared at the remains of the balloon with a curious look. A broad smile found itself on En's as he rushed back towards Jiraiya. Said white-haired man was calmly eating his food when En appeared in front of him. Given up already? En held out a water balloon. The balloon moved and suddenly small spikes appeared in the balloon as it thrashed around violently. There was a loud pop and Jiraiya smiled as he saw the balloon pop. The first stage is complete, En said with a smirk. The two were back in the makeshift training grounds. You may have completed the first task, but the second is even harder. The first step was rotation. The second step is force. He tossed a rubber ball to En. You have to pop this rubber ball. It's 100 times harder than the water balloon. If you don't believe me, you'll find out pretty quickly. With that said and done, Konoha's famed super pervert left in a flutter of leaves. En's eyes widened. Hey, you can't just ditch me, you bastard! His yell went unanswered. En sat on the ground. He held the rubber ball out and tried to do what he did with the water balloon. It made several spikes but didn't pop. Kyuso. I don't care what the perv says, I'll beat his time and my old man's. The day was a blur for En. All he did was try to pop the rubber ball, but it just wouldn't pop. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was enjoying his free time by hanging out with the ladies. For research, he would tell the annoyed En. The second day of trying to pop the rubber ball, En was sitting on the ground. All he had managed was to puncture the ball with a small hole made from his chakra. Several of the depleted balloons were around him, and felt like the balloons were mocking him, proving that he hadn't passed phase 2. The sound of a small pop and the sound of air slowly escaping were the only sounds in the clearing. Once again there was only a small hole in the balloon. En tossed the deflated balloon over his shoulder. He grabbed another ball. He decided that since he was here he may as well ask Kyuubi for some help. Hey Q, you got any ideas on how I can get this thing to explode? Try and concentrate more, add some more power, the great fox said to his container. Your concentration keeps leaving you when you get angry. En nodded his head. With a small growl, he channeled a much larger amount of chakra to his hands. He focused entirely on the white ball. The ball started to wiggle underneath the palms of his hands. Like with the water balloon, it looked like spikes that were trying to get the hell out of the water balloon. And then all of a sudden it popped, and had channeled so much chakra into the ball that once it finally popped, a huge gust of wind came from the ball. If En hadn't channeled chakra to his feet, he may have been swept away, and fell to the ground panting. A small smile found its way to his features. Finally, after nearly 3 days of non-stop training, En quickly fell asleep. He wasn't expecting his perverted sensei to come back anytime soon. He may as well catch up on some much-needed and deserved rest. With Jiraiya, the famed legendary Gamma Sannin was currently in a bar. Now normally for the man he would be trying to pick up chicks, but tonight was different. It was for business. He held up a recent picture of his runaway teammate. The man he was showing it to looked at the photo, trying to see if he knew her. He finally spoke. "No, sorry, I've never seen her before in my life." Jiraiya sighed. "No, it's alright, sorry to bother you. I know her." A man's voice spoke from over the bar. He wore a purple cloak that was open in the middle, showing off his muscles. "I also know where she is right now," he said as he took a sip of his drink. Jiraiya sat down next to him. "Let me buy you a drink," Jiraiya said with a grin. The tan man waved off the offer. "There is no need. I made quite a lot of coin from that woman." He smirked at how much money he had made from Tsunade's awful luck. "Tsunade," Jiraiya thought with a sweat drop, "you always were awful with gambling. No wonder one of your nicknames is the legendary sucker." "So she lost, huh?" Jiraiya asked with a deadpan. He sighed. "Tsunade, you really need to stop gambling." The man smiled. "No, don't say that to her. I won't make any money without her bad luck." He looked at the white-haired man. Her losses were beginning to pile up again. "So she ditched town and went to another location, Tanzaka town." Jiraiya nodded. "Thank you for your help." He got up from his chair and headed out the door. "It's time we left. Should probably get in." He headed towards the clearing where he knew the blonde would be. Tanzaka town. 2 figures were standing on a hilltop. They were not in the town En and Jiraiya were in. Instead, they were actually looking at Tanzaka town. "Tsunade will be there." A familiar voice spoke to the taller man. The man speaking was revealed to be a smirking Kabuto. The man he was talking to was none other than Orochimaru. Orochimaru smirked deviously. Finally, he glanced down at his grayed and useless arms, courtesy of his former and now dead sensei. "And with her medical expertise, I can regain the use of my arms." In Tanzaka town, a blonde-haired woman was in a casino. She wore a gray tank top and over it was a robe with the kanji for gamble on the back. Another thing many of the men noticed were her E-size breasts. A dark-haired woman in her early 20s was standing behind the woman who was using the slots. A look of unease on her face. She was holding onto a pig with pearls around its neck and in a little shirt. A look of unease was on the pig's face as well. The woman, or known to many as Senju Tsunade, stared at the moving slots with narrowed eyes. Suddenly the first slot stopped at a 7, the second stopped on a 7, and then finally the last and final slot stopped on a 7. Shock erupted on Tsunade's face as the machine beeped out the jackpot song. Dozens of coins came pouring out of the machine. All around her were people congratulating her on the lucky win. The dark-haired woman laughed in delight. "Lady Tsunade, a rare thing does happen once in a while," she said with a happy smile, obviously talking about the woman's awful luck at gambling. Tsunade didn't speak. She only stared at the 777s with shock that was soon replaced with narrowed eyes. Something bad is about to happen. But what? Little did the Sannin know at the moment. But she was about to face old friends of the past. The slug Sannin had no idea that her fellow Sannin were moving on to her position. Chapter 24. The Slug, the Snake, the Toad. A crowd of onlookers were crowded around the girl holding the pig and Tsunade. They were chatting amongst themselves as Tsunade kept hitting jackpot every single time. Tsunade seemed to be the only person who didn't look happy. She knew in her very being something bad was going to happen. "Shizen," she finally spoke as the dark-haired girl looked at her in surprise. "We're leaving." The two exited the casino. Tsunade declared that they were going to leave, but relented to her apprentice who wanted to see the famous castle. The two headed towards the castle, Tsunade glancing behind her shoulder every so often, feeling as though something was watching her. With Jiraiya and En. "This is it," Jiraiya announced to the disgruntled En. They were on the same hill Orochimaru and Kabuto had been on. The entire town of Tanzaka town spread out below them. The town wasn't exactly large. It probably only held around 500 people by the size of the buildings. Tanzaka was more of a tourist resort than an actual place where people would settle down in. And saw Jiraiya looking to the west where a small cloud of steam rose from what were obviously the bathhouses. The largest building was no doubt the castle, but one of the many hotels was also large. and could easily identify the casinos due to their flickering lights, despite it being daytime. He could also see the civilians roaming the streets, either with their loved ones or buying things from the stores that littered the streets. "Hey sensei," and said as he looked down on the town before glancing at his teacher, "when am I going to start the third and final stage?" He asked curiously as he really wanted to finish the final part, and to finally get to try to make a Rasengan. "Why, we can start right now," Jiraiya exclaimed, wherein looked at him in excitement, which was quickly gone as Jiraiya took out a deflated balloon from his pocket. After a couple dramatic and exaggerated breaths, the balloon was full of air. He bounced it to En, the balloon slowly floating into the boy's hand. En's eyes were twitching. "You know, I think I may soon gain an unstable psychopathic hatred for balloons," he said calmly. Jiraiya ignored his student. He had blown up another balloon, a bright red with yellow dots on it. The first step was rotation, the second power, and now the third is. He held up the balloon as En waited in anticipation. Nothing happened. The balloon neither exploded nor shook, and was about to yell at the Sannin before he realized that chakra was being used inside the balloon. "This is what is happening inside the balloon." Jiraiya raised his other hand and the Rasengan formed in his palm, the bright blue ball of sphere humming softly as it spun. "The final stage is control. You have to use everything you've learned in the last couple steps and control it," Jiraiya explained as he held up the Rasengan, and nodded his head. He held the balloon in between his hands. He focused his chakra to form within the delicate balloon, willing it to spin with power, willing it to become like Jiraiya's, trying to control it. The balloon wiggled underneath his hands, it popped, and the chakra escaped into the open air. "You can keep trying as we walk," Jiraiya said as he headed towards the town, and following him with another balloon. There was another pop and a curse while Jiraiya laughed. At Tanzaku Castle, Tsunade and Shizen stood on one side of a small alley that led to the castle, Orochimaru and Kabuto on the other. The mentioned castle was now a very large pile of rubble. Tsunade looked at her former teammate and fellow Sannin and narrowed brow. Her honey-brown eyes hardened as she looked at the shifty grin on the snake Sannin's face. Shizen stood by her sensei and master. She had no idea on what to do. Tsunade may have trained her, but only with medical jutsu. She may be able to fight off a low jonin, but she knew that she couldn't take on Orochimaru. But she would fight if she had to. She would protect her sensei. On the ground besides her, the pig also got into a battle stance, her delicate pink snout curling back as though she smelled something nasty, probably Orochimaru. Tsunade inspected the man in front of her. He looked awful, that much was clear. Beads of sweat formed and dripped from his pale face, the usual stark white making him look even worse. His eyes looked pained, though he hid it very well. Orochimaru was in some serious pain if even a small bit of it could be seen in his yellow eyes. His heartbeat is fast. With that pale complexion, or even paler complexion, he has a high fever. He also looks fatigued, as though he hasn't slept in weeks. She looked at Orochimaru's arms, which were heavily bandaged. "It's been a while, Tsunade." Orochimaru finally broke the silence. Tsunade could hear the small traces of pain laced into his voice. Had she not been the greatest medic in the world, she would have missed it. "That it has, Orochimaru," she said carefully before crossing her arms and looking at the man with a frown. "Why are you here? Or more importantly, what do you want?" "I doubt it's to have a nice cup of sake with an old friend." She stressed the word old, meaning not anymore. Orochimaru chuckled. "As clever as always. You're right, I have a favor I would like ask for." He slowly looked down at his bandaged arms. "Tsunade-sama." Kabuto spoke to the famed medic, but was quickly interrupted by said famed medic. "I don't treat anyone anymore, go somewhere else." "You knew this," she said, or more like accused, at Orochimaru. "After everything that's happened, I refuse." "I'm afraid that won't work," Kabuto said as the sunlight reflected off of his glasses eerily, his tone hard and with a hint of a threat enlaced in it. "You, of all people, know how serious Lord Orochimaru's wound is, and you know that you are the only one who can heal him. Seeing as you went as to track me down, and successfully too, means that wound isn't any ordinary wound," Tsunade said as she looked at the bandaged arms with a small hint of curiosity. But her instincts as a shinobi knew enough to not to try and get a closer look. She could see the hand twitching violently. "I am well aware of your enhanced healing abilities. The only way you haven't healed yourself with your inhumane experiments is that perhaps it isn't a wound, more of a sealing," Tsunade said calmly as she looked at the two. "What did you do, Orochimaru?" Orochimaru gazed at the sky for a couple of seconds as though trying to remember anything important that had happened to him in the past couple weeks. "Oh, I remember." He looked at his old teammate with cold eyes. "I killed the third Hokage." It took a couple of seconds for the words to phase through the women's heads, but when it did, anyone could see their emotions. Tsunade's eyes widened as far as they could, unshed tears forming, a shocked and chocked gasp escaping from the blonde. Shizen gasped in shock as well, her eyes slowly filling with tears. The pig put her head on the ground, she covered her eyes with her front legs. You! Tsunade growled out, anger appearing in her eyes as she tried to not deck the asshole right here right now. Don't go and be all angry at me, Tsunade. Everything with a heartbeat and flesh will one day fall to the ground dead and begin to rot, Orochimaru said in a tone as though he was some sort of instructor trying to pass a simple theory that everyone agreed on to a stubborn student who didn't get it or believe it. But then again, you would know all about that, wouldn't you? Shizen glanced anxiously at her master, knowing full well what the bastard was getting at. Tsunade's eyes were shadowed by her hair. She was trembling in rage. After all, you let the two most beloved people in your entire life die, Orochimaru said, his eyes gleaming with enjoyment as he saw the emotions flicker on Tsunade's face like a fireworks show. Orochimaru's form shook as he laughed. Their deaths were really a terrible way to die. Shizen threw saban needles at the two so fast that they almost didn't have enough time to react. Almost. Kabuto jumped in front of the calm Orochimaru and blocked the small needles with a kunai. Kabuto caught the last saban with his fist. A dull pink fluid leaked out of the tip of the needle. Poison, he thought as he looked at the dark-haired woman. Tsunade finally spoke, a small soft smile. You've always been the same, Orochimaru. From when you were just a child to now being around 50 years old, your personality is still the same. She looked at the two men with her soft, sweet smile, making her look like a sweet-tempered woman, which was as real as a quadricorn. You know my personality as well. Tsunade's fist hit the large stone wall behind her. The entire thing shattered before exploding due to the sheer strength and pressure of her punch. A large cloud of dust settling around the four. Tsunade's gentle looks were replaced with blazing eyes that screamed for vengeance, and were alight with rage. I'll kill you! So strong, Kabuto thought as he saw the damage made by a single blow. She's so scary as well. She is no doubt single. I'm going to kill you, you annoying little bastard! Tsunade yelled. With En and Jiraiya, the Konoha Sannin and Kumo Genin were walking through the streets of the town, and channeling his chakra into the balloon, which kept popping. All of a sudden Jiraiya sneezed violently. Someone must be talking about me, he announced with a grin. No doubt it's some lady who wished she could be with me. Yes sure, and said before grumbling to himself, probably some lady that wants to kill you for being an annoying pervert. With the two Sannin, Kabuto held up his hands. We aren't here to fight, he announced, hoping the woman would listen. Sadly, said woman looked like she'd rather dissect them very slowly with a rusty nail. I will give you one chance and one chance only. Get out of here, before I make you two disappear off of this earth. Tsunade threatened. You are the only one who can heal Lord Orochimaru's wound, Kabuto argued stubbornly, as though he wasn't concerned at all on how a single woman had completely decimated an entire stone wall with a small punch. He wondered how much power she had if she used all of her strength, something he defiantly didn't want to find out. Leave, Tsunade said bluntly. We aren't asking for you to do this for free. Kabuto shot back, hoping maybe that would help the situation. We can make a deal. I will count from 5 to 1, Tsunade said darkly. If you aren't out of my sight by then I will attack. Please just hear us out. 5. Kabuto struggled on what to do. He sighed as he looked at the ground. 4. Neither Kabuto nor Orochimaru even moved a single centimeter. 3. They still had not moved. But Orochimaru's eyes were narrowing dangerously. Shizen tensed ready in case the man attacked. 2. Shizen went into a battle stance. She held her poisoned saman at the ready. The two men still did not flee. 1. The second the last piece of the three-lettered word left Tsunade's lips, she rushed towards Orochimaru and Kabuto. Kabuto got into a battle stance. I can bring back your dead baby brother and Dan, the two men you love the most in this world, Orochimaru said. That did the trick. Tsunade stopped rushing towards them. She had froze to the spot immediately as the words left the snake's mouth. Shizen stopped rushing as well, her eyes wide in shock. Kabuto smirked in triumph. With my forbidden jutsu, I can bring them back to life, Orochimaru said while Tsunade and Shizen looked at him in shock. Nawaki and Dan. He said the names as though remembering a lost memory. Tsunade shivered when she heard those names. Wouldn't you love it, Tsunade? To hear your lover and baby brother's voices once again? To hear little Nawaki laugh and boast on how he was going to become Hokage just like your grandfather, the first Hokage? To see the love in Dan's eyes that reflected your own? To hear him talk of becoming Hokage and save the lives of thousands with medical expertise? To hold them close, to cry tears of joy when you would stutter out how much you miss them? To have them hug you and promise they won't leave you ever again? Imagine that, Tsunade. Tsunade felt something wet on her cheeks. She realized that she was crying but made no move to wipe them off. Since we are still here, Orochimaru smiled smugly, it seems we have a deal. You will tell us your answer soon enough. We'll find you when you've decided. Before Tsunade or Shizen could reply, the two Oto shinobi left in a flurry of leaves. Where they went they did not know. Shizen looked at her teacher, who merely looked at the spot where Orochimaru and his minion had stood. Then without a word Tsunade walked down the road back to the town, her head down, Shizen and the pig quickly following her, with Jiraiya and damn, and whistled as he looked at the completely destroyed castle with respect. Okay, whoever this guy is, I want to meet him. He held up his fist and flexed, showing off his large muscles. The second I found out who this person is, I'm going to challenge them to an arm wrestling match. Jiraiya's sweat dropped at his student. Do you always challenge extremely powerful shinobi to fight you in any competition? He asked, and nodded his head at once, making the man fall to the floor in disbelief. Why didn't you challenge me when we first met? He whined, and shrugged. You didn't really seem strong, he simply said, making Jiraiya fall into a deeper depression. Jiraiya went back to his feet, completely ignoring the fact that he had been momentarily on the floor in a cloud of gloom. Well, we must continue on then, he declared, and was leaning around the man. Pervy sage, he spoke as he continued to look over the man's shoulder. Is it just me, or do you see a pack of panicky civilians running as though the Shinigami was chasing after them? And stopped one of the civilians. Hey, what are you guys running from? The man trembled and looked like he was about to pass out from fear. A monster. He pointed at the castle. A giant snake destroyed the castle. He then continued to run away. Snake, and Jiraiya said at the same time as they looked at one another, each knowing what this meant. God, I hate this stupid pale-ass pedophile. He's showing up everywhere now. And complained. And, no time to waste, we need to go. Jiraiya spoke grimly while En nodded in agreement. The two hurried towards the castle, or what was left of it. You suppose this snake was around the size of the ones that attacked your village? En asked. Jiraiya nodded. Orochimaru must have ended the summon, tch. His eyes hardened as he thought of the man who killed his sensei, the man that used to be his best friend. Jiraiya sighed. I don't feel any sign of chakra near here. Orochimaru is gone, and Tsunade has probably returned to the town. I can't find her exact location, only the general area. And looked at his sensei. Got any ideas on where she'll go? Jiraiya nodded. Yep, she'll be at a bar or gambling house. Hell, maybe even both. And sighed as well. There are a lot of those here, he pointed out, but he seemed to like the prospect. This is great training for finding a target hidden among the public. Jiraiya laughed. Is everything you do training? He asked with mirth, and looked at the man, and despite wearing sunglasses Jiraiya could see the blank look being given to him. Never mind, obvious answer. He smirked. Oh, I can't wait until you're older. I bet that endless stamina will come in handy. He gave the boy a wink, and looked at the white-haired man blankly. What do you mean? For fights? And asked, his innocence on certain things obvious for the pervert. Jiraiya slapped his head in exasperation before looking at his student. Oh, I have so much to teach you, my dear apprentice, he said sagely as he walked away, and following and still trying to figure out what he meant. Nighttime, the sun set and the moon rose, leaving the entire city covered in a shroud of darkness. Standing out against the dark was a brightly lit bar. Hey, old man. Tsunade's voice rang as she gestured for the bartender. Another shot. It was obvious by Tsunade's red flushed face that she was heavily intoxicated, along with the fact that a dozen empty bottles of sake were at her side. Sensei, I think you've had enough, Shizen cautioned the older woman. Tsunade ignored her student. She lowered her head and looking at her lap. Shizen saw the unshed tears forming in her eyes. Sensei, she said sadly as she looked at the distressed woman. The manager's voice rang through the bar. Said manager was a rather plump and chubby fellow with a receding hairline. You can't bring a brat into my bar. He's underage. Who are you calling a brat? I can take you. You ain't got nothing on me, you little fat. A boy's unfamiliar voice yelled at the manager. Ma, calm down, sir. He won't be drinking. He's just helping me out with stuff. A man's voice spoke apologetically. That voice, however, was familiar. Tsunade and Shizen whipped their heads to the voices. Jiraiya, Tsunade's other teammate, was across the room talking to the fat manager. A tall, muscular boy who looked like he lifted boulders instead of weights was scowling at the manager. Tsunade saw the boy's bright sun-kissed hair, which oddly looked familiar to her. Jiraiya then saw her. The two Sannin stared at each other. Tsunade's gaze was bleary as she was drunk, while Jiraiya's gaze was one of disbelief. Jiraiya pointed a finger at here. Tsunade, he yelled, making En look to where he was pointing in surprise. Jiraiya? Tsunade yelled in disbelief as she stood up from her seat. Why? Why are you here? We finally found you, Jiraiya said as he walked over. It seems my skills haven't slackened at all when trying to find a single woman in a casino town. What are you talking about? And asked the man. We came here because you were whining about your sore feet, and you wanted to get drunk and flirt with girls. Jiraiya's hand clamped over the blonde's mouth. He shot a smile at the confused women. Don't mind him. Tsunade noticed the symbol on his hyatate. She had noticed it when he came in, but with him being with Jiraiya, she had assumed it held the leaf symbol. Instead, it held the cloud symbol. Jiraiya! He's a cloud nin! Tsunade exclaimed. She is drunk, mind you. Jiraiya looked at En with a look of shock and horror. Oh my god! He yelled. I've been giving a Kumogakure shinobi all of my techniques and secrets, and I never realized. Oh, how did I miss this? He then turned his head to Tsunade. I knew he was from the cloud, Tsunade. I know the difference between a village's hyatate. He sat himself at their booth, and seating with him. 2 Sannin in a day, Shizen thought in disbelief as she looked at the third and final Sannin sitting across from her. I cannot believe it, and jolted as he felt something brush against his legs. Oh, that's Tuntun, Shizen explained as she picked up the small pig and had her sit in her lap, and stared at the pig dressed with a necklace of large pearls and a nice-looking pink shirt. I've seen weirder, and thought to himself. The 4 were silent. The only time they spoke was when they ordered dinner. En was eating some zosui while watching as Tuntun was eating her own dish of some sort of curry. I've seen so many old friends today. Tsunade broke the tension as she played with her food. Her eyes were glazed slightly as she went down memory lane. She was brought out of her thoughts when Jiraiya gave her the last of the sake. You're talking about Orochimaru, aren't you? Jiraiya asked, making En and Shizen look between the 2 Sannin, wondering what was going to happen. What happened at the castle? Don't deny it. A gigantic snake completely crushed the thing. There's only one person who has the snake contract besides Anko, and despite being a little fiery, she isn't exactly the type to try and kill innocent people. Nothing happened, Tsunade said after sharing a look with Shizen. We merely greeted each other as old friends. En's eyes narrowed. He had taken off his shades earlier, letting the women see his bright blue eyes that continued to make Tsunade felt like she knew this kid, but from a different time. He looked at Jiraiya before turning back to the woman. Don't lie. I hate it when people lie to me. Tsunade completely ignored the boy, which of course made En mad. What do you want from me? She said as she echoed the same words she had asked Orochimaru. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Tsunade, the village hidden in the leaves has demanded that you become the 5th Hokage. Tsunade's eyes widened as did Shizen's. Tuntun chocked on her soup, spraying En with pig saliva and soup. Ah, gross. En complained. Jiraiya looked at his fellow Sannin with a serious look. Sensei is dead, he stated. Orochimaru was right. The 3rd really is dead, Shizen thought with grief. Orochimaru killed him, didn't he? Tsunade asked casually as though she was asking what the weather was going to be tomorrow. He told me about it. Well, he more like boasted about it, and gritted his teeth. His fist pounded the table, causing it to make a large dent and crack the wood. Tsunade and Shizen were surprised by the boy's strength. It wasn't like Tsunade's strength where she used chakra to enhance it. The boy was using his real strength. How can you casually talk about your former teammate killing your sensei and Hokage? En demanded. If someone killed Darui-sensei and boasted about it, I'd kick their ass. Yet you don't seem to care. Tsunade turned one lazy eye at the blonde. Jiraiya, who is this brat again? His name is En, though you may know him better as Uzumaki Naruto. Tsunade gasped slightly. Hey, I told you to call me En. I was raised by that name. Doesn't seem right to just throw it away. En said, Minato's son. But how? We all thought he died during the Kyuubi attack, and why the hell is he wearing a Kumo hyatate? Tsunade wondered. Jiraiya sighed, sorry, but she knows that name better than the one you use. This is Yatsuki En. Yatsuki? Tsunade questioned. The Raikage's family. Shizen looked at the boy in surprise, seeing as he really didn't look like any of the Yatsukis. En nodded and grinned. Yep, I will explain all of this later, Tsunade. But you must return with me to become the Hokage. Jiraiya said again, and I want to go home, and added in as though that cleared things up. Jiraiya ignored the blonde as he looked at the woman. Do you accept the title? The booth went silent as they waited for Tsunade's answer. A minute dragged by before. No. And blinked before saying, What do you mean no? He demanded. Every shinobi and kunoichi in the 5 great nations dream or have dreamed of taking on the title of Kage, and being one of them. One of his dreams was to become the Raikage. Jiraiya merely smiled at the words, despite the fact she had flat out refused. I remember those words, you always said it whenever I tried to ask you out. Tsunade snorted at his words. I still don't have a clue on how you even thought in that big dumb head of yours that you even had a chance of going on a date with me, you old pervert. Sensei, please tell you aren't thinking of taking Orochimaru's offer, Shizen thought with worry. You of all people know of how he plays on an opponent's weaknesses. He's managed to make iron-willed shinobi to wrap around his finger. You still haven't answered my question. And said to the woman, it was easy to say that he didn't like being ignored. I'm surprised. You look like a brute, but here you are talking intelligently. And blinked. Did she just insult me? No, she's giving you a compliment, Kyuubi said sarcastically. Of course she insulted you, baka. My grandfather and granduncle, sensei, and the fourth. They all became Hokage and dreamed of ending war and ushering an era of peace, yet they have all died in vain. Killed while dreaming of things that can never happen for the village. Tsunade said as she sipped her sake. For the first time Jiraiya looked saddened. You've changed, Tsunade. I don't know you believed with your heart before, but to say such a thing out loud? He shook his head in disappointment. Tsunade shrugged. Years change people. I'm in my 50s now, as are you. We've seen and experienced things this brat hasn't nor could even try to comprehend in that little brain of his. This time Jiraiya had to hold on back as he lunged forward. Little brain, I'm gonna. Let me go, sensei. He growled. Tsunade continued on despite the blonde trying to strangle her. It's no wonder Sarutobi sensei died. At that old age he was going to fall sooner or later. Jiraiya let go of En, who was struggling to control himself. His eyes were shut in concentration, but when Tsunade said that he was thankful because they would have seen his crimson eyes burning into her. Old age, don't tell us that the reason he lost was because of his age. Sure, it didn't help him, but he died as any Kage would do, saving his village and people, and spoke angrily. My father is almost as old as your third Hokage was, but I didn't see him fall to the ground dead cause of his age. You are insulting me, my village, and more importantly my family for disrespecting my father that way. Tsunade sighed. Becoming Hokage would be a bother. Only fools wish to become a Kage, whether it be the Raikage, Hokage, Kazekage, Mizukage, or Tsukikage. Fools, all of them. Jiraiya quickly grabbed En again as he tried to get to the busted blonde. Let me go. When Jiraiya dragged him back into his seat and growled at the lady, the two women and Jiraiya were shocked to see his eyes flash red for a brief moment. Jiraiya's face turned grim. I told you to not insult my fathers, and struggled to control his anger. But it was so hard when this drunk lady was insulting both his surrogate and biological fathers, and was spitting on his dreams, my fathers, both of my blood and my heart. Became the Hokage and Raikage. I won't let you slander them, you old drunk. He slammed his fists together and cracked his knuckles, red lightning sparking around him. I'll beat you myself. The booth was silent before Tsunade leaned forward. You're on. I'll beat you into your place, you little brat. Let's settle this outside. She was smirking as she was confident she could beat this little kid. Jiraiya sighed heavily, and, there you go, challenging strong ninja. Especially when this one has the same strength as your brother. Geez. The party of four went outside of the bar and into an abandoned street. You can give up now, Tsunade offered, still smirking. I'm a Sannin and I'm not going to hold back just cause your daddy is the Raikage. Tell you what, since I am feeling generous I'll only use one finger to beat you, okay? And picked at his ear. I'm sorry, but giving up isn't in my vocabulary. Just get ready for me to kick your ass. Old hag. Tsunade's eye twitched. Oh, you are so dead. And didn't waste any time. He rushed towards Tsunade with a great burst of speed. Before the Sannin knew it, and was behind her aiming a powerful kick to her head. Tsunade, despite her drunken state, was a Sannin. She whacked away the boy's foot and moved her finger towards his chest. Oh, no way am I losing 5 seconds in. En thought, and then disappeared in a lightning shushin. Tsunade looked up as En flung several kunai at her. She skillfully dodged all of them, but when En landed on the ground he pulled his fist towards him. Tsunade suddenly found herself bound in ninja wire. Tsunade broke out of her steel bonds with her super strength and rushed towards the boy. En got ready as she raced for him. And moved away from the deadly finger that he knew was a lot deadlier than it looked. He coated his hand in lightning and attempted to punch the busty blonde. Tsunade caught the boy's hand and held it as En struggled to get out of her killer grip. Tsunade squeezed her hand and En grunted as he felt something break. He ripped his hand from the grip and immediately back-flipped over the blonde in hopes of getting through her guard. He aimed his one unbroken hand at the nerve point on her neck, which would instantly knock her out. He managed to strike it but was completely caught off guard when Tsunade didn't crumple to the ground unconscious, and didn't have time to dodge the fist that was lodged in his gut. It was like being punched by his brother, and was flung across the street and went through a fence, several trees, and an old house. Humph, that was easy. Tsunade said, thinking the boy was knocked out. Don't underestimate me. And yelled as he leapt through the rubble. He didn't appear to be in much pain, probably because of his training with his brothers and father. Getting punched through a couple of trees and a building was something they could shrug off. And raced towards the woman. He held his arm out and blue chakra formed in his palm. It formed into a sphere. Tsunade gasped in shock when she saw the Rasengan, but as En got closer the ball faded. With the jutsu of failure, En just decided to use his fists and feet. Tsunade dodged the flurry of punches and kicks. Even she had to admit this kid was good, real good. He was obviously above Chunin skill, maybe even Jonin, but she was a Sannin. She had fought in the Great Wars. She was the greatest medic to ever grace the world, save her grandfather the first Hokage. She knew the body inside and out. From a single organ to a cluster of sensitive nerves, she activated her mystical palm technique, her hands glowing a soft light green. She jabbed her fingers at a cluster of nerves in En's shoulder. The shoulder hung loosely as he could no longer use it, and didn't give up and continued to try and kick her, though he never used his armor. Before he could block it, Tsunade jabbed her palm on En's chest, directly on his heart, and fell to the ground with a small thud. Tsunade was panting slightly. I'll give him credit, he's good. Don't worry, she added as she saw the concerned look on Jiraiya's face. He'll only be passed out for half an hour or so. You didn't see everything, Jiraiya started. Despite his age, he's an amazing shinobi. Hell, not even Minato managed to grasp things like he can when he was his age. He has a bloodline limit, which greatly enhances his right hand no Yoroi, a jutsu I'm sure you're familiar with. He can use the lightning release armor. Shizen exclaimed as she looked at the unconscious boy with surprise. That and more, Jiraiya said mysteriously before he looked at Tsunade. I remember you saying you needed only one finger, yet you use your entire hand. TSK Tsunade. The kid is strong, and you know why he is angry at you. Besides the fact you insulted his family, of course. He looked at the blonde Sannin. These were his exact words when I asked him why he adored the title of the Kage. And he said, "It is my dream to become Raikage." Tsunade gasped as she heard two familiar voices echo in her head. "It is my dream to become Hokage." Before she could respond, she heard another familiar voice, only this time it wasn't in her head. And yelled, "I want a rematch. This time I'll take off my weights and use my jutsu. I'm not going to hold back." How? Shizen asked, surprised. You should still be asleep for another half hour. Tsunade looked at the enigma in front of her. She then spoke. No. What? And yelled, I won't take no for answer. We're going to fight. None of us will hold back either. Tsunade decided since the kid was still woozy from being knocked unconscious, she may as well have a little fun and rile the boy up even more. And why should I do that? You've been beaten. You couldn't even form the Rasengan to stay in a stable state. Shut up. I bet you I can complete the final stage and master the Rasengan in 3 days. And declared. Tsunade smiled. Oh really? Then let's make this interesting. She walked to the downed N and crouched next to him, giving N a full view of her assets, and blushed and looked away as he didn't want to be called a pervert and attacked by an angry lady. Albeit he did want to fight her, but he had seen how angry women attack perverts, thanks to Jiraiya. Let's make a little bet, Tsunade stated. A bet? If you can master the Rasengan in 1 week, I'll give you this. Tsunade pointed at something on her chest, and saw that it was a necklace. It was a dark blue, almost green crystal that hung from a simple chain necklace. 2 small bells were on either side. That's... Kyuubi's shocked voice rang in En's head as he saw through En's eyes the necklace, and what it was exactly, who it belonged to, and what it did. What is it? En asked, as he was curious to know why such a small little crystal could get such a reaction from Kyuubi. Tsunade-sama. Shizen scolded her sensei, that's your gran. I am aware of that, Shizen, Tsunade told the woman flatly. This brat was my grandfather's, the first Hokage, necklace. With it you can buy 3 mountains with gold mines. There is only one necklace like this in the world and you're looking at it. Whoa! And thought as he stared at the necklace that had once been worn by the strongest shinobi to ever grace the elemental nations. I really want that. I accept your bet. And said with his trademark grin. If you don't complete the Rasengan in a week you lose. Tsunade then played with the orange pouch that had a kitsune's face on it. The bag was loaded with cash. And I get all of your money in this pouch of yours. Hey. How'd you get Kitsu-chan? En demanded as he saw his wallet being held by the lady as he checked all of his jacket pockets, pants pockets, his backpack, his sheaths, and even his socks. Shizen, we're leaving. Goodbye, Jiraiya, brat. And with that said and done, the slug Sannin turned around and walked back to her hotel, her student and assistant following her, Tun-Tun nipping at their heels. Jiraiya and En were silent as the two women disappeared before En suddenly remembered something. Hui. She still has Kitsu-chan. That's all of my money. Jiraiya simply turned around and headed to the hotel. Come on, En. We'll get it later. That is if she doesn't spend it all on gambling. Jiraiya muttered the last part to himself as student and teacher walked back to their hotel. Chapter 25, Sannin Showdown. En was sharpening one of his swords. They had arrived back at the hotel and Jiraiya had gone off to someplace, no doubt to get drunk and flirt with girls. And then heard a knock on the door. I swear to all that is holy if it's those Akatsuki rapists I'm gonna. En mumbled as he opened the door. He was surprised to see Shizen. I'm sorry, En, for coming here so late. Shizen apologized to the surprised En. May I come in? She asked, where En nodded, and she entered the hotel room. I want to apologize for my sensei's behavior. It's fine, En said. I really don't care what she thinks. She doesn't have my respect that much. Only reason I came with Pervy Sage was so he could protect me and teach me my dad's Rasengan. She isn't that type of person, Shizen insisted. She used to be a very kind woman who would protect her village without hesitation or doubt. En looked at her dubiously. Are you sure you are talking about the woman I just met? I'm pretty sure you must be talking about her in a parallel dimension where the entire world is run by gigantic fruits. You have a very creative imagination, don't you, En? Shizen asked with a deadpan before her eyes returned to their previous saddened state. After that day, it all changed. The day she lost her love, her dreams, her hope, everything that defined her. It all left her. All she had left to remind her of her old past and bitter present was that necklace. It's the only thing that matters to Tsunade anymore. Not even her life can compare to it. It's something that should not be used in a bed as foolish as this. In all the years we've been roaming, she has never even thought of using the necklace for bets. Even when we owed a very large sum of money did she never ever even think of selling the necklace, and for a very tidy portion of gold I may add. For her to bet it now, if she loses I don't know what would happen. Well, she shouldn't have bet it, and replied, not really caring about Tsunade's little sob story. It's not my fault that she made the bet, I just accepted it. I never back down from a challenge. It's not something you can just wear. That necklace isn't just any type of necklace. Shizen argued to the Jinchuuriki. It won't acknowledge you. It only acknowledges Tsunade-sama. Okay? En said as he looked at the woman who was getting angrier and saying even weirder things. Shizen glared at the boy who didn't understand what she was trying to explain. If anyone besides my sensei wears the necklace, they die. At that, En's eyes widened in shock and surprise. With Tsunade, the famed medical genius was sitting alone on a rooftop staring at the full moon. She fiddled with her grandfather's necklace, and like it did every time Tsunade suddenly found herself going down memory lane, she saw herself much younger, maybe only in her late teens. She was in Konoha and besides her was a little boy around the age of 12. He was much tanner than Tsunade and had dark brown hair. A Konohagakure Hideate was worn proudly on the boy's forehead. Nawaki-chan, happy birthday! The younger Tsunade said to the younger of the two and squeezed his cheek with a happy smile, completely ignoring the look of annoyance on the boy's face. Nei-chan! Nawaki complained to his older sister, and managed to regain his cheek and look the other way with a small huff. But he looked back at the blonde when he realized that she was holding out his birthday present. Don't you want your present, Nawaki-chan? Tsunade asked with a smirk as she waved the small box around. Nawaki immediately was at her side. When she gave him the box he quickly opened it. What he saw shocked him, for there nestled in the paper was his grandfather's necklace. Big sis, Nakai spoke in an odd tone as he slowly picked up the chain and looked at the green crystal with a look of pure awe. Is this what I really think this is? Tsunade smiled warmly at her brother. Of course it is, silly. Although you'd like it for your birthday, you are a ninja now. She pointed at the boy's hiatate. I've worn it for long enough, now the necklace needs a new owner. Nawaki dropped the box and rushed at his sister. I love you, big sister. He cried as he hugged his sister as tightly as he could, tears of joy streaming down his cheeks. You have been wanting it for a long time, Tsunade reminded the boy as she hugged him back. Just take good care of it. I'll make sure it never leaves my sight. Nawaki declared. I'll make sure that not even a scratch gets on it, or even a speck of dust. He then turned around so he could look at the entire village. The first, second, and third Hokage's faces were looking at them across the village. This village is Grandpa's treasure. I'm going to protect it until my last breath. He quickly put on the necklace and it shined in the sunlight. I'm the grandson of the Hokage who built the village hidden in the leaves. Tsunade was watching the scene with a proud smile as she saw her brother look down on the buildings with a broad smile. He'll make a good ninja, a good protector, she thought warmly. Someday I'll be just like Grandpa and Granduncle. I will become Hokage, Nawaki declared. Becoming Hokage is my dream, Tsunade smiled. Nawaki-chan, take off your headband. Nawaki looked at her in confusion but did so. Tsunade leaned down and kissed the tan boy's forehead. Nawaki beamed and Tsunade's smile matched the exuberant boy's own. Their laughter rang through the entire village. The dark rain continued to pour down on the Sannin, but she took no heed. Her eyes looked like a deer's in the headlights, shocked and fearful. But not able to move, she was too caught up in her emotions. A much younger Orochimaru and Jiraiya stood in front of her, their faces set in pity and grief. Orochimaru was wearing a white cloak with purple markings whilst Jiraiya wore a white cloak with flame patterns adoring the sleeves. Tsunade took a tentative step forward. Jiraiya stepped forward and put his large hand on her small shoulder. It's best if you don't look at the remains, he said grimly. There's no need for that, Jiraiya, Orochimaru said with a sly grin as he leaned against the building. If she wants to see it, she can see it. Besides, even if she wants to see the remains, she won't be able to determine if it's her little brother. Jiraiya glared at the snake Sannin for his blunt words but didn't reply. She rushed in. A pained cry soon echoed through the building. Tsunade was then shown standing over Nawaki's gravestone. The necklace she had given to him mere weeks ago was placed on her neck. Tears were running down her cheeks as she struggled to not break down at her brother's grave. The present Tsunade blinked away the tears forming in her eyes. She then remembered Dan, the love of her life. He had the same dream as her brother, to become Hokage. But when she had given him that damn necklace, he had died too. But unlike Nawaki's death, she was there to witness it. His wounds were so deep, so severe, that even with her great medical expertise she couldn't save him. That was where her fear of blood had surfaced. Every time she saw a drop of the crimson liquid, it would take her back to the battlefield where she couldn't save Dan. She had never let anyone besides herself touch the necklace. She was sure that it was cursed, that it would let only her wield it. She sobbed into her hands, her form shaking as she remembered how everything had gone wrong. When Dan and Nawaki died, they had taken pieces of her with her. Now all she is was a bitter woman who had lost so much. A couple hours later, Tsunade had gotten off the roof and instead headed to one of her favorite places, a bar. It was a small stall with open flaps as doors, as was a traditional store for the land. She was currently on her second bottle of sake. Mind if I join you? Jiraiya asked as he sat down next to her. Tsunade didn't say anything. She merely filled her cup with sake and downed it in one gulp. Jiraiya gestured to the bartender for another bottle of sake. Once he poured himself a nice cup, he drank it before turning to his teammate. Knowing you, I would have thought that you would have rather died than give up your necklace. To use it for a bet makes it even more foolish. You have awful luck, Tsunade. And what makes you think that the brat will master it? Tsunade demanded. That jutsu isn't an academy jutsu. It took you over 2 weeks to master it, and you were already a Sannin and your brat was already Hokage. Jiraiya shrugged. Let's just say I'm good at judging people. He's so much like them. He whispered the last part out. Tsunade paused in her drinking to look at the man with surprise. It's so weird. It's like seeing Minato back when he was a kid. He may have his father's looks, but he definitely has his mother's personality, especially her temper. Jiraiya and Tsunade chuckled at that, remembering Kushina's famous temper. En's a surprising person. He doesn't have a bitter bone in any part of his body. He's unique. Then again, his family has always been eccentric. He's definitely picked up some of their habits. He's been raised good. I doubt I could have done a better job. He really sees those guys as his real family, huh? Tsunade asked as she took another shot. Jiraiya nodded. They're a very close family, and loves them and they love him back. Interesting how life turns out, nay? If you told me 13 years ago that Minato's son would find his way to Kumogakure, and raised by the Sandaime Raikage as one of his own, well, I'd call you a foolish drunk. Tsunade snorted into her cup. So the brat doesn't care about Konoha? He's truly a Kumogakure ninja? Yep, he's proud of his home, and I mean Kumo. I can't ever see him betraying it, much less for Konoha. He respects his birth parents. Despite being raised in Kumo, he still learned of their feats during the war. Tsunade listened. Sounds like an interesting kid. Jiraiya laughed. Oh, trust me, you have seen nothing. He'll win the bet hands down. He drank another glass. I'm afraid you've lost yourself a necklace. Tsunade stared at her sake with an unreadable expression. Within, a strangled cry echoed through the abandoned clear. Dozens of trees now bore several whirlwind markings that had been scared into the trunks by En's chakra. En himself was panting as he tried to form another Rasengan into a large boulder. The rock didn't explode or even break, it only left an imprint, his chakra spinning. En gritted his teeth. Damn it! He roared as he punched the large boulder. which instantly crumbed under his fist and imploded. And sat down. What the hell am I doing wrong? He asked his lifelong companion. It just takes time, Kit. It took the Fourth 2 years to create it, and that insufferable perverted sage 2 weeks under the Fourth's guidance. Kyuubi said patiently as it watched from within the seal as En destroyed trees with his bare fists. En sighed as he looked at the destruction he had caused because of his temper. I want to go home. I know that Jiraiya is just trying to protect me, but I think an entire shinobi village can do that better than one man, even if he is a Sannin, he said to his tenant gloomily. I honestly don't get why that Tsunade was even asked to become Hokage. I'd just rather be back home doing missions with my team, sparring with my brothers or dad, hanging out with Yujito, Ko, Samui, Karui, and Omo. Hell, I'd rather catch Shusher if it meant I could go home. Think of it this way, Kit. If you win the bet, your control of my chakra gets better. And perked his head up in interest. What do you mean? He asked as he sat down and meditated. He then instantly found himself in the forest that the strongest Bju called his home. Said Bju was calmly laying down in the sun, his collar that held the seal that tied the two together shining in the sunlight, and was sitting right in front of the fox's snout. He sat on a well-worn flat stone. He was far enough he could see the fox's eyes, but close enough to be near him so the fox could hear him speak, and often came here. Not like some of the ruder and less knowing Jinchuuriki who'd rather have nothing to do with the tailed be sealed within them. He didn't only appear when he was in a rage or in the need of chakra. He just came here to talk. Whether it is about large things like the Akatsuki threat, they have been discussing that for a while since the two found out about the criminal gang, to small things, and had no idea how much the Kyuubi was touched by the boy's actions, not that he let the blonde know. Kyuubi knew he was right when he believed his Jinchuuriki to be different from other humans, especially his last two Jinchuuriki. He had never told him that his mother had been his second host. He'd rather not tell the boy that his mother, while an incredibly nice woman who would do anything for a friend, something that En strongly took after her, had left the fox defenseless by her chakra chains. He had been strung onto a rock with spikes piercing his hands and tails. It had been a painful imprisonment, and Kushina didn't seem to care about his pain. She had assumed that he was just pure evil that needed to be locked away to rot. She never tried to talk or befriend him like her son had, so he never told the boy about it, though he did tell him that his previous host had indeed known the woman and had told him about her. 1. In Kumogakure, Raisin and A were in the hospital looking down at two men who couldn't even gather the strength to stand up, though they did try, but the pain was too much and they would be scolded into submission by the passing doctors and nurses. They decided to rest when Raisin had said so. A was frowning as he looked at the last remainder of the Storm Border Patrol, the same border patrol that had run into Akatsuki. Just hearing the damn name made the young man grit his teeth in pure rage, but also with apprehension. He feared for his brothers and sister. As any older brother should, he would protect the three as best as he could. But even he had to admit that these guys were the real deal. The evidence was laying down right in front of them. Storm was the best of the best. The ninja who were too strong to be jonin, the ones with special skills or techniques, the ones who could take on anyone and come back alive. But two men, too, had fought an entire platoon of them. 10 men in total, and had completely slaughtered them. The only reason these two had managed to survive was because Heron had managed to grab Rabbit, who was barely clinging to life, and was reverse summoned by his summoning animals. Even then it was close. Heron tried to not break down in front of his leader. He was a storm, he wasn't supposed to show emotions, but two monsters had completely slaughtered his comrades, his friends, his brother and sisters in arms, and he had fled. Granted, he and Rabbit were the only ones left alive, but he should have done something, maybe to try and bring back some of his friends' remains. He knew without a doubt that the Taki missing Nin was trying to get a bounty from them. Something that greatly angered the man. Heron, Rabbit, I know you guys are badly beaten up, but we need to know everything about these men. They're bad news, and this won't be the first time they'll try and sneak into the country, Raisin said as he looked down on his men. We were going through our routine border patrol when Hawk announced that he felt two very large chakra signatures slowly moving towards the village. He said he didn't recognize it, so we knew that it wasn't anyone from the village. When we saw the slash marks on their hide, we knew that they were trouble, Heron stated while Rabbit nodded at the words. We told them to leave or they would be taken into custody, but they refused. And then, he trailed off as he remembered. It was terrifying. I have never seen anything like it before. We attacked and they attacked as well. I went after the one called Haydn with Rabbit and Lion. It was hard to avoid that damn scythe of his, but then Lion got pricked. He wasn't even bleeding badly, but some of it got on the weapon, and then he licked the blood and transformed into something that'd looked like it had come from the pits of hell itself, and then he stabbed himself. What? I asked in disbelief. Why would he do that? We wondered that too, especially since Haiden stabbed his own heart. We didn't know what to think of it before Lion just fell to the ground, dead. Rabbit said. I rushed over to him, while Rabbit defended us. Heron spoke next. I quickly scanned his body for injuries but didn't find anything. It was only when I used my chakra to search for internal injuries did I find it. His voice quivered slightly. His heart. It was completely destroyed. There was a gaping hole in it, like something had pierced it. Lion was dead before he even knew it. What about Haiden? I asked, equally unnerved by the jutsu. Did he die as well? No. He was fine. If anything, he seemed overjoyed by the pain of getting pierced in the heart. Guy's fucking insane. Raisin's eyes narrowed as he thought it over. Damn it, I'm getting too old for this kind of shit. What happened after that? I got hit, Rabbit said bluntly. It wasn't bad. A stupid scratch, but he managed to lick what little blood there was on the scythe. Heron knew what was going to happen and quickly threw a ration jutsu at him. He didn't stab himself in the heart as he faced the oncoming jutsu, so he stabbed himself into the gut. Rabbit gestured towards the bandages wrapped securely around his mid-waist. But he didn't even try to dodge Heron's jutsu, took it on head first. I was still conscious and standing despite the fact I had a hole in my stomach, but I was barely conscious as I felt Heron's jutsu attack me and it knocked me out. Whatever hit Haiden, if he had consumed the blood of another, would affect the person whose blood had been taken as well, Heron said. That's an interesting and deadly jutsu, Raisin said as he saw how close the men had come to death. Only pure luck that they had survived, and if they had not, they would have no idea about these guys and their techniques. What about the other one? His name was Kakuzu. We didn't get to see too much of his jutsu since we were too busy trying to not get stabbed by Haiden. But we did see the main thing about his jutsu. He used black wires most of his attacks. He had some sort of masked beasts made of them. He could even take apart pieces of himself apart, and move it by using the wires that were inside him. Personality-wise, the man is even-tempered and shows great skills with dealing with multiple targets at once. He was highly observant, and managed to find any holes in someone's guard. Compared to Haiden, who was a berserker and didn't really have any type of plan besides trying to hack us into small pieces, he was the deadliest of them. Raisin turned around to look at Dari, who was watching the scene with an unreadable expression. Go get every single bingo book and find out who these men are. I'm giving you the all-clear to our archives. Find out who these bastards are. No one comes into my country and attacks and kills my men without consequence. Dari nodded and quickly left the room to find more on these two Akatsuki members. Raisin looked at the men. I'm glad you two are alive. Don't worry, we'll find these bastards and kill them. Rest now. Heron and Rabbit nodded before slowly drifting off to sleep. Raisin and quickly leaving and heading to the office. I can't believe it, I muttered darkly the second they entered the Kage office. If we had been faster, we may have caught those guys before they could escape. Hell, we may have even fought them. But then Yujito and B would have been in danger. We had no idea that they were moving so fast. Raisin sighed wearily. I have a bad feeling about this group. A jutsu that doesn't have the user be killed even with a scythe to the heart, and to kill someone else with it. I don't like it. That makes two of us. The two were silent before Ace spoke again. If these guys were here, do you think that the ones going after the Kyuubi ran into N? I don't know, son, Raisin said. Hopefully Jiraiya is watching him. If not, and we lose, and I'll kill the pervert myself. I just want the boy to be home. It don't feel right having him so far from Kumo. The boy can take care of himself, but a father can't help but worry. And will probably be back in a week or so. He'll be running so fast to get back here he'll make a tornado. And that's just so he can eat some of Kicho's ramen, Ace said while Raisin's sweat dropped slightly as he knew far too well how much his youngest child enjoyed the dish. A smirked, though I think he may just want to hang out with Yujito. Raisin smirked at that. I have a bet going on with Dari and C. A continued. Dari thinks that'll it will be N who says it first. C thinks that one of us will have to get them together since they are so stubborn they can't see the obvious. Raisin chuckled. And what about you? He asked his eldest son with curiosity. A's smirk grew bigger. I'm betting that Yujito just outright says her feelings to him before kissing the idiot. Raisin and A's laughter rang through the entire village, making people wonder what their Kage thought was so funny. With N suddenly sneezed, the Rasengan he had been trying to form losing its shape and disappearing. Someone must be talking about me, he said with a grin before he suddenly turned angry. No, they're insulting me. He cried out as he knew that someone was making fun of him. How he knew, he did not know. He had spent the entire night working on the Rasengan. He had sensed Tsunade watching him for an hour or so but had ignored the woman, and felt his stomach grumble. Looking up, he realized that it was morning, so he decided to get some food. It was only when he was at a food stall did he remember that Tsunade still had his wallet, He called the lady a couple of colorful words that made parents quickly cover their children's ears before giving the boy an angry glare. He realized he only had around 5 ryo, barely enough to buy some rice. He then noticed a quick lottery stall. Seeing as he nothing to lose, he spent the entire 5 ryo on a ticket. And the seller were completely surprised to find out that out of several thousands N's single ticket was the winner. With his pocket much heavier, he set out to eat some food. When he did that, he decided that maybe he should try a gambling place. Everyone else did it, and he wanted to see why the adults liked it so much. The gamblers let him join with much enthusiasm, thinking they could easily beat the kids since he had no idea what to do. And won every single game and bet he made. He left the gambling house with a big grin and a large sack of money, the moans of the losers echoing through the gambling house. Now I know why adults like gambling so much, and sniggered as he dropped off his money in his room. He made sure to put seals on it so no thieves, Jiraiya, would try and take it before stashing it under his bed. The boy then quickly headed back to his self-made training area, where he would remain there for the rest of the week, save for eating and rest. The morning quickly turned to the afternoon that then turned into night, but N had yet to stop forming failed Rasengan after failed Rasengan. There was a difference compared to last night's though. Instead of the imprint of the chakra had gone, there was actually a decent-sized hole, but it wasn't near the size nor depth of Jiraiya's. Sweat was trickling down N's haggard face. His fingers were twitching slightly due to chakra exhaustion, and even with the fox giving him chakra he was still exhausted. And then remembered the bet. He knew that it wasn't simply a matter of mastering the Rasengan, it was to restore the pride that had been mocked by Tsunade. Nobody insulted his father. With another roar, N formed another Rasengan, and slammed it against a tree. He blinked wearily before falling unconscious. The days started to blur, and never really paid any attention to it since he was dead set on remaining in the self-made training field that looked like it had been in a war zone. The craters got bigger and bigger with each passing day, but one day Jiraiya came rushing into the training field. "What are you doing here, sensei?" And questioned as he formed another slightly unstable Rasengan. He noticed with slight interest that Shizen was with him. He also noticed that Jiraiya wasn't looking that good. "What's going on?" and asked as he suddenly got a bad feeling. "Tsunade drugged me," Jiraiya said grimly. "She's going to meet up with Orochimaru." Besides him, Shizen winced. N's mouth opened in shock. "What the hell, pervy sage? Aren't you a freaking war veteran, a Sannin, and a stealth master? How the hell did you get drugged without you knowing it?" Jiraiya whacked the boy on the head. "I didn't expect it. She's the greatest medical ninja to grace this land. I bet she could make a poison that even Orochimaru couldn't detect." He whined. "We need to find her. If Orochimaru gets his hands back, then it's just trouble for everyone," and said as he and Jiraiya turned to Shizen. "Where is the meeting supposed to be?" he asked the dark-haired woman. Shizen dipped her head in defeat. "I'll tell you, but please don't harm my sensei. We don't know what her answer is." As she told them everything that happened when meeting with the missing ninja, they suddenly heard a loud explosion coming from the castle. "Shit, let's go," Jiraiya said as he rushed towards the noise, and Shizen following them. At the battlefield, Orochimaru and Kabuto stood on one side of the field, Kabuto standing in front of his weakened master protectively. "So that's your answer, Tsunade, to kill me?" Orochimaru said with a deadly glare. Tsunade spoke. "I knew you weren't telling the truth. I was your teammate for countless years. But still I wish to have seen them one more time." She said the last part sadly as she thought of Dan and Nawaki. "But then I realized something from that brat of Jiraiya's," she continued. "It's not good to get stuck up in the past. I realize that now, even though parts of my heart will always miss those two, it's best to not get tied down by it. So the negotiations were a fail. You think?" Tsunade said dryly. "Then I'll have to force you to heal my arms." Tsunade rushed at the two, her fist clenched and ready to deck the two. Orochimaru and Kabuto quickly jumped in front of the wall before heading to a much larger area. Tsunade easily destroyed the stone wall and chased after them. The Oto shinobi quickly dodged a downward kick from Tsunade, creating a large crater where the two had stood. This went on for a couple minutes, the Oto ninja fleeing and trying to dodge Tsunade's powerful attacks. One hit, and you were as good as dead. The three were now in a large field, riddled with dozens of large craters. "I'm not much of a taijutsu user," Kabuto said as his hands started to glow blue, "but I can cut your muscles until they are nothing but jelly." His chakra scalpels were now activated as he smirked. He rushed at the blonde and traded a couple of fast blows that Tsunade dodged easily. Tsunade caught the scruff of his shirt and threw him across the field. Kabuto managed to use chakra to lessen the blow and rushed back at the blonde. This guy isn't an ordinary medical ninja, as expected from a subordinate of Orochimaru's, Tsunade thought as she dodged more blows. She tried to punch the boy, but he was surprisingly agile and managed to dodge them all. Tsunade managed to give a sharp slap to the boy's shoulder, but she didn't use much strength as the boy only fell to the ground. She jumped up high into the air and then sailed downward, her foot ready to smash into his face. Kabuto dodged it at the last second. He rolled away from the deadly attack, but as he tried to get up he realized something was wrong. When he tried to move his right hand he felt his left leg twitch. He struggled to get up but found it near impossible. He was twitching violently as well. What, my muscles? No, my nerves. Orochimaru was watching the scene with an amused smirk. So she messed up Kabuto's nerve system by turning his chakra into electricity. Poor Kabuto's brain doesn't know which nerve is which. Damn it, if I move my right hand my left leg moves, if I move my left ankle my right shoulder moves, if I move my right foot my left hand moves. This isn't good, Kabuto mused. To the shock and complete surprise of Tsunade, Kabuto rushed toward the woman with a kunai at the ready. I know you're terrified of blood. You'll be seeing a lot of it, he cried as he swung down. A hand caught Kabuto's arm. Everyone looked in surprise to see a scowling and holding Kabuto's arm high. Jiraiya was standing beside his apprentice, calmly looking at Orochimaru. Tuntun the pig was on the man's shoulder. Well, and said as he smirked at Kabuto, I knew something was off about you during the exams. His hand tightened, making Kabuto wince at the pressure. So you're here and you know this guy? Jiraiya asked his apprentice, and nodded. Yeah, he took the Chunin exams, and held a whole lot of information he shouldn't have known, gave away a lot of my skills even before the exams started. Looks like I finally get to fight you, Kabuto. I wouldn't get so cocky if I were you. I know your skills and stats. I won't underestimate you. And pushed the boy away from him. He quickly dodged Kabuto's leg that was aiming for his head, and he then dodged a barrage of punches from the Otonin. Honestly, En sighed as he continued to easily dodge the punches. Getting bored of it, he quickly broke through Kabuto's defenses and punched the boy in the chest. Kabuto was flung backwards and skidded across the ground. He quickly rolled to the side as En's foot came crashing down. Do you honestly want to fight me in taijutsu? En questioned the gray-haired boy. You know that is my greatest strength. At least try genjutsu or something. Stop lecturing your opponent, and crush him. Kyuubi yelled at the boy. Sheesh, you never let me have fun. En whined. Kabuto smirked. Thanks for the tip, but I won't need them. Kabuto's hand glowed bright blue. His chakra scalpels activated once again. He continued to attack the Kumogakure genin, who now had to deal with the chakra scalpels. Damn, I can't let those things touch me, and thought as he used his arms to knock the arms away from him. He would rather not lose the ability to use his hand right in the beginning of the battle. He then gave a swift roundhouse kick to the boy's face. Kabuto managed to move out of the way so he didn't get hit full force, but it clipped him enough to be sent flying. Suetun, water bullet jutsu. Kabuto called out as he spat out a large glob of condensed water that headed towards the Ninetales Jinchuuriki, and charged up his right and no Yoroi, red lightning covering the boy protectively. He then ran forward, and as the water bullet jutsu hit him, it merely evaporated. Raitun, electromagnet murder, and said as he held up the palms of his hands outward. Lightning was being shaped into his hands, covering them like Kabuto's chakra scalpels. Kabuto's metal hyatite glowed faintly, but said man didn't notice it. All of a sudden Kabuto found himself being pulled towards En by some sort of invisible force. He didn't have any time to twist out of the way as En's fist lodged into his stomach, making the boy cough up blood, and then grabbed his arm and threw him across the field. Kabuto stayed on the ground, but then to everyone's, save Orochimaru, surprise, he got back up as though he had taken a walk in the park. How the hell is that guy still up? And wondered in shock since he wasn't really holding back. You seem to forget that I'm a medical specialist, Kabuto said with his trademark smirk. I'm afraid you'll have to do more than merely punch me if you want to take me down. Kabuto then returned to Orochimaru's side. Orochimaru-sama, please take off the bandages wrapped around your left arm. And get back here, Jiraiya said, and the boy appeared by his side. We're going to take them down. Shizun, take care of Kabuto. Tsunade, you rest. Tsunade's eyes were trembling as she looked at the blood on the ground, courtesy of Kabuto. No doubt her hemophobia was kicking in. No matter how small the amount of the red life force, even a drop could send her into the deep end. Summoning jutsu. Kabuto cried out as he slammed his palm on the ground, the smoke leaving to reveal the two snakes of towering height and size, easily the size of a large building. Jiraiya bit his finger and formed hand seals before slamming his palm onto the ground, summoning jutsu. He cried and waited for the gigantic cloud of smoke that would have appeared when Gamabunta came. Instead, a poof of smoke half the size of Jiraiya appeared. The smoke cleared to reveal Gamakichi, the eldest son of Gamabunta, a toad that was barely the size of a human's head. Gamakichi waved, "Yo, eh." Jiraiya's jaw hit the ground, and waved at the little toad, "Yo Gamakichi." He greeted the little toad happily. "Hey Lord Jiraiya, what do you need me for?" Gamakichi asked. "Damn it, whatever toxin Tsunade used on me completely messed up my chakra control. Looks like I need for help. Man, I won't hear the end of this from saying how I needed his help to take these guys down," Jiraiya thought with a sigh. "Alright, my time to shine. Now looks at you creepy little snake, you won't escape from us this time." And thought in his normal rhymes, and bit his thumb and formed the hand seals needed, summoning jutsu. A large cloud hid the two males. When it cleared, it showed a smirking En and Jiraiya standing on top of Gamabunta's head. Gamakichi was on En's shoulder. The orange toad was grinning in excitement, and he was ready to see his pops fight against Orochimaru. This was so cool. This boy may actually be a problem in the future, Orochimaru thought with a small frown. He could see how strong this boy would get with his family and Jiraiya teaching him. He was a threat to his plans for immortality. It seems he would have to kill him before he became a threat. "Boy," Gamabunta said as he smoked on his pipe, staring the two snakes down, "you sure have a knack for getting in trouble." "I'll take that as a compliment," and muttered, "Oi, Gamabunta." Jiraiya called down to the giant toad. "Oh, so you're here as well, Jiraiya. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, and it seems Tsunade is here as well. Hey, it a good old reunion," Gamabunta stated as one of his large eyes looked at the still trembling Tsunade, who was being tended to by Shizen. The snakes that Orochimaru and Kabuto were perched on suddenly slithered at the toad with blinding and surprising speed. Gamabunta jumped high into the air as the two snakes' heads crashed into the ground, causing large chunks of earth to fly from the force. Shizen escaped from the heads, Tsunade being carried by here. All of a sudden Kabuto appeared out of the dust and gave the girl a quick but brutal punch to the face, sending the girl flying and Tsunade crashing to the ground. "And you know any long-range but large jutsu?" Jiraiya asked his student calmly as they continued to sail into the air, and nodded his head. "Only a couple. I don't know how good they'll be against those summoned scales, but I'll try my best." And closed his eyes in concentration, a blue aura of chakra covering the boy, and formed a dozen hand seals. The second he did the last one, the snake Kabuto had been on appeared from the dust cloud, its razor-sharp fangs ready to swallow the male's whole. "Right-on, cloud style, 1000 volts!" and cried as he aimed his palms at the rapidly approaching snake. Gamabunta held his sword at the ready in case the jutsu failed. A large beam of pure white energy burst from the boy's fingertips. The beam was incredibly large, easily around the size of Kiba's Gatsuga jutsu when they spun. The beam struck the snake summon's open maw. The snake's eyes widened as it fell to the ground, electricity sparking all over the long and slender body. Soon enough the smell of burnt reptile reached everyone's noses, and fell to one knee panting slightly. "Damn it, that took a lot of chakra, not to mention I've been training non-stop for 3 days, how ironic." "Amazing," Jiraiya thought in shock and awe as he saw the burnt and smoking body of the large summon. To be able to channel so much chakra and convert it into pure electricity, and then to make a beam, that has to be high A rank. "Once again you've impressed me, En. One snake down, only 2 more to go," and said as he looked through the dust cloud for said snakes Sannin and Summon. "You can do jutsu, right?" he asked Jiraiya. "I may be a complete badass, but I don't think I can defeat Orochimaru by myself. Luckily he has a pretty big handicap, which we can use to our advantage." "Glad to know that you're a brute with brains," Jiraiya said jokingly. Before En could reply, Orochimaru's head appeared out of the cloud. His neck was several meters long, and still elongating. Jiraiya stood in front of En as he formed hand seals, his white hair growing even spikier, reminding En of a porcupine. "Ninja art, needle jizo." Jiraiya's hair went in front of the two protectively. Several hair needles pierced Orochimaru's foot, but he didn't appear to be fazed by the pain. Orochimaru swung his other foot down ready to kick Jiraiya off the toad, but didn't notice to see a blonde flash by his side as En appeared by him and kicked him with all of his strength, sending the pale man back from where he had come with the speed of a falling comet. "Thanks for the save, En," Jiraiya said to the blonde with a grin, and grinned back before it faded when he felt Shizen's chakra signature weaken, as though she had been knocked out. The fact the Kabuto was now directly in front of the vulnerable Tsunade did not help at all, and quickly charged his lightning armor and shushined towards the spot. Thanks to his armor he appeared there so quickly it was as though he had teleported. Kabuto was looking down on the Sannin in front of him. "To think I respected you so much? You, the greatest medical ninja to grace these cursed lands since your grandfather," whimpering and trembling at the sight of blood. He held up his hand he had cut with a kunai, A couple drops of the red liquid fell and landed on Tsunade's face, making her tremble even more. His hand turned blue as he held up his chakra scalpel. This is heavily underpowered. Best not accidentally kill you. He thrust his hand down to knock the woman out. A hand covered in blue chakra and red sparks grabbed his hand, making Kabuto's eyes widen in shock and surprise. You didn't forget about me, did you? And asked softly, his hand clenching Kabuto's. A small cut was on his hand, blood slowly dripping. It was only thanks to En's armor-enforced hand that he didn't lose it, not that En would have done such a foolish move. I won't let you take the old hag to heal your master, En continued. Even in her vulnerable state, Tsunade's eye twitched at the nickname. If it means I have to pound you into the dirt until you ran out of chakra and can't heal yourself anymore, I'll gladly do it. En's right hand opened up, the tan palm looking upwards. A small flicker of blue chakra appeared, its shape slowly but surely become less transparent. A small and familiar humming came from his hand, and soon enough a bright blue and deadly ball of chakra appeared in the boy's hand. Kabuto, knowing what that jutsu was, gasped and quickly tried to regain his hand, but En's iron-tight grip prevented him from doing so. I won't let you go, En said. It can't be. Tsunade gasped as she saw the jutsu, completed and perfected. Rasengan! En yelled as he shoved the ball of compressed chakra into Kabuto's chest. The second the jutsu hit Kabuto's chest, the young man was flung backwards with unrelenting force. He spun like a top before crashing into a large boulder. A small yet deep crater was on the Oto-Ning chest. Jiraiya paused momentarily as he saw the force of En's Rasengan and grinned. Hey, good job, En. That kid, he's a powerhouse, Gamabunta thought as he fought against the snake summon and was winning the upper hand. I think we need to have that drink now, even if he's underage. I think it'll be interesting to see the kid drunk off his ass, though there would be a lot of repair bills. No way, he did it, he really did it. He completed the Rasengan. He finished the final stage in a week, Tsunade thought in shock and awe as she looked at the defeated Kabuto. To think that you still protect Konoha, even after all this time. Orochimaru said to Jiraiya as the two continued to trade blows. They were careful to not get crushed by the fighting summons. And that you found yourself another apprentice with that Kumo brat, are you hoping he'll last, unlike the others? Jiraiya flinched at the implication. He remembered his students, whom had all died long before their time had come. Yahiko, Konan, Nagato. The two others on his genin team who died before they could make a name for themselves. Minato, that boy, he is a threat in my eyes. A threat that needs to be put down before he ruins my plans, Orochimaru stated. Then I'll have to stop you, Jiraiya yelled as he rushed back at the famed snake Sannin. And in Tsunade's eyes widened when they saw Kabuto stand back to his feet, clutching his bleeding chest, and while looking like he was in some serious pain he still managed to stay on his 2 feet. Kabuto's steaming chest slowly started to heal, the burnt tissue being replaced with live tissue. Soon enough he looked completely healed, like he hadn't been hurt at all. Note to self, make a Rasengan that'll destroy his whole body and to wipe that smirk off his face, and thought as he watched on with narrowed brows. But then all of a sudden Kabuto gasped in pain and fell face down on the dirt. No way, even with my regeneration powers, this amount of damage. I don't have enough chakra to completely heal myself. And quickly rushed towards the fallen man, his arm ready to pierce the man's heart. Nobody could survive a direct attack to their heart, especially with enough lightning to make it implode. But before he could reach him, and senses screamed at him to move, which he quickly did, making Orochimaru's Kusangi blade miss him, and quickly backpedaled. He glanced around to see that Gamabunta had gotten rid of the last snake summon. Aside of a bit of out-of-breath breathing, he looked in good health. Kabuto slowly got to his feet. Kabuto, use it now, Orochimaru said as Kabuto nodded and bit his finger and wiped it on a tattoo that was on Orochimaru's arm, and instantly recognized it as a summoning seal. Oh, and muttered as a giant cloud of smoke appeared before revealing the snake boss, Manda himself. Yo, Granny, and called to Tsunade, who seemed to no longer be affected by her hemophobia. Could use a little help here. Tsunade nodded. She was going to repay the blonde for saving her life and for helping her, summoning jutsu. Tsunade and En were suddenly on the top of the slug queen, Katsuyu. A large blue and white slug. The 3 summons and Sannin stood off on another, Gamabunta and Katsuyu standing by each other's side, while Manda stood alone with the Oto ninja on his large purple head. It seems that everyone is here, not much of a heartwarming reunion, but I knew that was never possible, Gamabunta said as he looked at Katsuyu and Manda, or more like glared at Manda while he looked at the giant pure white and light blue slug with a warm gaze. Orochimaru, Manda spoke deeply, his blue piercing eyes looking at the Sannin atop his head. Why did you summon me to a place like this? I expect at least 100 sacrifices for you randomly summoning me to fight your battles. The snake boss threatened to his summoner, not aware to the small fact that Orochimaru had absolutely no use of his hands and was vulnerable. Had Manda known that he would have instantly devoured Orochimaru before going back to his home to nap. Gamabunta slowly unsheathed his sword. Katsuyu got ready. I've always wanted a snakeskin wallet, Gamabunta stated as he looked at the purple snake with narrowed eyes. And I've always wanted your big fat head mounted on my wall. Manda hissed at the large toad. The clearing was silent, the foes waiting for the other to make the first move. It was Katsuyu who made the first move. Acid slime. Her soft voice ringing the clearing as she spat out dozens of blobs of deadly acid at Manda, who with his deadly speed dodged the burning acid, which burned through the earth when it touched it. In the matter of 5 seconds Manda had crossed the clearing and had wrapped his long and scaly body around Katsuyu, his venomous fangs ready to bite into her soft neck, and charged up his right and no yoroi. He leapt from Katsuyu's large head and his fist crashed into Manda's giant head, making the appendage crash into the ground. Manda was so surprised at the force and power of En's strength his body slackened, allowing Katsuyu to wriggle out of his deadly embrace. Manda bared his fangs at the lone En. Before Manda could try to eat the human, Gamabunta was by his side, his sword attempting to pierce Manda. But Manda was no weakling. He managed to dodge the sword the size of a tower, and bit down of the flat of the blade, smirking as Gamabunta tried to reclaim his weapon but to no avail. Manda saw Katsuyu rushing forwards. He lashed out his tail at the snail summon with blinding speed. His smirk grew further when he felt it connect with Katsuyu's fleshy body, but it disappeared when instead of taking the brunt of the force, Katsuyu exploded into 100 mini snails. She quickly reformed, not even hurt. Manda swung his tail at Gamabunta, who jumped back to avoid the tail, also letting go of his sword. Manda wasted no time and flung it at Katsuyu, who merely turned into another dozen large slugs as the sword sailed harmlessly above her and Tsunade's head. Acid slime, Katsuyu said again, spiting out another globe of burning acid at the snake. Manda quickly dodged the acid, but as he did so he didn't see the water bullets sent his way, courtesy of Gamabunta, and didn't have enough time to dodge the giant jutsu. Manda grunted slightly as he was thrown backwards from the force of the water, but he didn't appear to be wounded thanks to his iron-hard scales. He rushed towards Katsuyu, his large fangs dripping with poison as he got closer and closer. Don't forget about me, and yelled as he appeared in the air and curb-stomped the snake's tail, instantly crushing the tip. Manda growled with anger and pain, his blue eyes instantly locking in on En. He lunged at the Kumo genin, who barely had time to jump into the air, Manda's jaws snapping shut barely a foot away from his lower body. Thunder flop! En yelled as he fell down quickly, his body still streaming with crimson lightning. His belly struck Manda's, the flesh between Manda's eyes and the tip of his nose, slamming it down into the earth, creating yet another large crater. A couple of large cracks were now on Manda's face due to the electrical chakra that had spread on the snake's face. No doubt they would scar. And then she shined away as Manda tried to eat him again. He appeared on top of Katsuyu's head and beside Tsunade. Bunta, oil! Jiraiya yelled down to his companion, who then formed several hand seals. Gamabunta yelled his agreement before inflating his stomach, his mouth filled with some unknown substance. Manda, seeing this, rushed towards the pair, hoping to stop them before it was too late. Katan, toad oil flamethrower, Jiraiya said as he exhaled a steady stream of fire. Gamabunta spat out a torrent of oil. The two justice connected and converged one another. The oil caught fire, making the large stream turn into a deadly inferno. The inferno was so large it easily dwarfed Gamabunta's towering height. Manda was caught in the middle of the deadly jutsu, and whistled as he looked at the jutsu in awe before realizing something. Hey, you've been holding out on me, he cried out indignantly. Through the flames you could barely see the shadowed outline of Manda. His flesh was dripping off of him like hot wax. Soon enough, only the charred remains of his body were left as the fire continued on. The fire stopped and everyone saw, not the charred skeleton of the snake boss, but instead a burned snakeskin. The ground rumbled underneath them. All of a sudden something purple appeared out of the ground and headed towards Gamabunta, who caught and held it instinctively. Gamabunta quickly realized that he was holding the tail and tried to turn around as Manda appeared out of the earth right behind him, his face scarred by En's jutsu. He looked pissed and was ready to kill the large amphibian. Before Manda could strike, however, Tsunade appeared in the air with Gamabunta's sword in her hands. With her inhumane strength she flung the sword down and pierced Manda through his mouth, pinning him down to the ground. All right. And cheered as he saw the snake defeated, but his good mood left when he saw Orochimaru and Kabuto on Manda's back, unharmed. Orochimaru was scowling. He opened his mouth and his tongue shot out into the air and managed to wrap it around Tsunade's neck. Jiraiya cried out her name but didn't know how to help without Orochimaru easily snapping the woman's neck. In the blink of an eye and appeared in the middle between the snake and slug Sannin. He slashed his electrified hand down at Orochimaru's fleshy tongue. His armor was covering his hand, making it as deadly as any sword. He cut through the fleshy appendage, and Tsunade quickly flung off the remaining tongue that was still around her neck. The remaining length of Orochimaru's tongue quickly retracted and went back into said man's mouth. He was glaring at the smirking En with cruel gold eyes. Orochimaru launched himself at En, who quickly started to dodge Orochimaru's attacks. But even though En was a taijutsu specialist, he knew that this was anything but a normal fight. Whenever he tried to attack, Orochimaru seemed to slither away. His stance was uncanny. It was as though he was dodging the entire time, trying to wear out his opponents before springing on them and taking them out, much like a snake. En got angry at the thought and threw a punch at Orochimaru, squarely hitting the man in the jaw, and wasted no time and got in another punch. Orochimaru was slowly but surely losing ground as En managed to continue his fast barrage of hits. Orochimaru's tongue sprung out of his mouth, and dodged the fleshy appendage, but it managed to catch his foot, making the boy fall to the ground. He quickly rolled to the side as Kusanagi pierced the ground he had been but moments before, and back flipped and appeared behind Orochimaru and kicked him in the back, sending him flying through a boulder. Tsunade appeared and hit the snake Sannin in the jaw, making a large cracking noise as Orochimaru was flung through the air yet again. Lord Orochimaru! Kabuto called out in concern, yet doing absolutely nothing to help his master, and opted to stay on Manda's back and watch the fight from afar. Now Orochimaru had to dodge the contributed attacks of both En and Tsunade. All of a sudden En and Tsunade were side by side. Take this! They yelled as one as they channeled a deadly amount of chakra to their fists, and punched the man in the jaw, sending him crashing into Gamabunta's sword and collapsing on Manda's back. Lord Orochimaru! Kabuto crawled towards his master, cradling his head as he picked him up gingerly as though afraid any sudden movement the man would shatter like glass. You too! Manda growled despite the sword through his mouth. You too will pay for putting me in this humiliating position. I'd eat you right now if I didn't have this giant hole in my mouth. And you, he glared at En, I will kill you for what you did, to dare scar me. Watch your back. And with that ominous message Manda returned back to the world of the summons. Orochimaru was on his feet panting deeply. He looked up and everyone could see a different face looking at them. Only a few tatters of his pale skin and his eyes the only remnants of his actual appearance. The Leaf Village. I'll destroy it without fail, Orochimaru said as Tsunade and Jiraiya glared at their former comrade. I will look forward to meeting you on that day. A fight to the death between the Sannin. He chuckled. Eheho, how I wish that day were now. But no matter. I am patient and the Leaf's days are numbered. Kabuto and Orochimaru slowly started to sink into the ground, and rushed towards them, but as his fist connected where they had stood and created a large crater, the two were nowhere to be found. And wasn't deterred and instead continued to pound his fists into the ground, creating crater after crater, but there were no signs of the two foes. Damn it! And cursed as he checked the area for their chakra signatures but found none. They escaped. And felt Tsunade's hand on his shoulder. When he turned around he saw the first Hokage's necklace held in her hand. Here, she pressed the crystal into a shocked En's hand. His hand tightened around the necklace in surprise. He looked at it dumbly before a wide maniac grin stretched his face. He quickly put it on. The green crystal shining in the sunlight. He looked at the woman. Thank you, he said warmly. He respected this lady now. She wasn't stuck in the past anymore. She had changed. That, along with the fact that she had thrown a sword the size of a building into Manda's gaping jaws, which was just plain awesome in En's book. The two loyal Sannin as well as their apprentices were seated at the same booth they had been at a week ago, but it was different. No longer was there any tension or awkward silence, which would result in arguments. The group laughed and joked with one another. Any disagreements or disliking had vanished when everyone had put their lives on the line to save the other. So, you're the fifth Hokage now, En said, his mouth full of rice. He was lightly whacked in the head by Shizen, who thought the boy should have better table manners. But even she couldn't resist the adorable puppy eyes and sent her way. Tsunade nodded and grinned. Awesome, now I just have to become fifth Raikage and we'll be fellow Kage. Oh? Tsunade asked amused. Who's the fourth Raikage? My big brother, who else? And said with a smile. I remember your brother back when I was traveling. One of his men got wounded and he knew I was the only one who could save him. I refused, Tsunade said as she remembered meeting the hot-tempered man. He challenged me to an arm wrestling match, and laughed so loudly that the people in the other booth looked over at them in annoyance. Ha ha ha, man, you must have lost quickly. Tsunade sipped her water. Actually, the only reason he didn't lose was because he was faster than me. He would have lost otherwise. What? The next day, En was shouldering on his trusty backpack. He was at the front gates of Tenzaku town. A saddened Tsunade and Shizen were there as well as Jiraiya. Shame you can't come back with us, Shizen said, and chuckled. I don't think I'd be welcome there. Besides, it's time for me to go home. I've been far away far too long. Still, it was nice to meet you too, he said. Tsunade, sorry about the way I acted towards you. Sure, you were annoying, hot-tempered, drunk, disrespectful, bitter, not trusting, insulting, an old hag. He would have continued on had not Tsunade's first crashed down into his head, making him fall to the ground. Ow, he mumbled as he got back up, rubbing his head in annoyance. Tsunade smirked. See you later, brat. Bye, old hag. And quickly dodged the other punch with a laugh. And, if you run into any Akatsuki, summon a toad. They'll reverse summon me to you. Don't try to take them on by yourself, Jiraiya instructed the boy who would return home alone. Right, pervy sage. And said, where Tsunade and Shizen burst into laughter at Jiraiya's nickname. Jiraiya twitched at the name. Stop calling me that. He whined to the blonde, which just made the other three laugh even more. Jiraiya sighed. Just make sure you get home safely. And nodded. Don't worry. If I see any of those guys, I'll summon Toad Boss. He can help me distract them so you have time to get reverse summoned. I have a feeling that they won't show up for a while though. Let's hope so. And gave the three a wave before turning around and headed down the road that would lead him back to his home, Kaminari no Kuni. Within seconds he was merely a blur as he raced down the road, eager to finally get back home with his family and friends. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizen watched until he was out of their sight before headed on a different road, the one that led back to Konohagakure, where Tsunade would be named the 5th Hokage. Kumo main gates. 2 days had passed since En had left the others. He didn't stop at all unless he needed sleep or food, and finally he was walking down a steep trail as he headed down a mountain. In front of him was a large circle of towering mountains, their tips completely covered by thick white clouds. En smiled. He was home. Shursen and Nokujiri were playing elements, like rock paper scissors, but instead using the elements. Earth. Nokujiri cried as he formed a fist, while at the same time Shursen yelled lightning and wiggled his fingers. Nokujiri groaned as Shursen laughed in triumph, and took the ante, which was Nokujiri's lunch. A laugh made the two look up and were shocked to see a grinning Yatsuki and looking at them in amusement. Yo, Nokujiri, Shursen. He greeted the two with a peace sign. En, you're back. Shursen cried out happily at seeing the young man safe and sound. Course I am. What, you didn't think I was going to let myself get killed without being go home for the first time in a couple months, did you? En asked the two. Nokujiri laughed. Nah, that wouldn't be like you. Though to be honest, the village has been too quiet since you've been gone, almost normal and boring. En's grin widened. Well, I guess I have to fix that, won't I? The two gate guards laughed. Yeah, it's good to have you back in, Shursen said as he allowed En to go into his home village. En's smile got wider as he looked at the familiar houses and mountains that made up his village. He chuckled before quickly running towards the Raikage Tower, skillfully avoiding any head-on collisions with any civilians. Raisin was grudgingly doing the paperwork that every Kage found themselves surrounded in. All of a sudden he heard the door crash open. He looked up ready to yell at whoever barged into his office. But the yell died on his lips as he saw his youngest son panting but grinning at him. With booming laugh, Raisin crushed his child in a bear hug. En, it's about time you showed up. I was beginning to worry you didn't have it in you to stay out of trouble without someone to pull you out of it. En laughed. Hey, come on, did you guys really have so little faith in me? He demanded his father, who merely chortled. So how did it go? Did you find the slug princess? Raisin asked the genin curiously. Yeah, we found her, but there was trouble too. Orochimaru showed his pale face when we arrived. He tried to convince Tsunade to join his side to heal his arms that the third Hokage sealed. She refused, and there was a huge fight between us and Orochimaru and his lackey Kabuto, and informed his father before telling the third Raikage everything that happened during the fight, including how he mastered the Rasengan. Let me see it, Raisin said, wanting to see the famed jutsu for himself, and formed a Rasengan in his palm and slammed it into the wall, effectively creating a large hole in the office. Raisin chuckled and ruffled the boy's hair. Nice job, son, I'm proud of you. Thanks, Pops, and said happily before he turned serious. Dad, there was also something else. I know about Akatsuki. How do you know? Raisin demanded. Did the Sannin tell you? Damn it, the entire reason we kept it secret from them was to not cause panic. Sure, we were going to tell them sooner or later, but that was when we knew they wouldn't get afraid. Simple. Akatsuki tried to capture me, and said matter-of-factly, "What?" Raisin roared, his right arm swinging downwards and completely demolishing the desk, paper flying everywhere, and raised a hand to shield his eyes from the flying paper and splinters. "What happened? Did they hurt you?" Raisin demanded to his son, looking for any injuries. "Dad, I'm fine, they just randomly appeared." There were 2 of them, wearing black cloaks with red clouds. I recognized one of them. Jiraiya knew the second one personally, and said the guys who tried to take me was Kisame Hashigaki and the other one was a missing nin from Konoha. His name was Hiriko. Raisin's eyes narrowed at the 2 names. While he knew the first, he did not know who the last one was. "I'll ask the Sannin about him. Hopefully he knows more about them," and nodded his head. The third Raikage then noticed that the boy, despite looking happy to be back home, looked dead tired. "Go home, and you need some rest. I'd rather not have you pass out in my office and having to carry you home like a 5-year-old. And huffed at that but nodded his head and headed back to his family's house where he could get some much-needed sleep. As Zen slowly made his way to the compound, he decided to use the main road. He was smiling softly as he saw the civilians going about their daily lives, making the whole area seem in a happy mood. He noticed with narrowed eyes of how much ninja were moving around. Now normally that wouldn't be that big of a deal. They were in Kumogakure no Sato, a much more militaristic village than say Konoha or Suna, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But En could see that many of them were either storm or jonin level shinobi. The moods ranging from the ninja seemed to be more grim and somber, and wondered what had happened to make his father extra protective of defending the village. "Oh well, goose, I'll find out later," and decided as he entered the compound. He quickly went to his room and immediately passed out on his bed, still in his clothes. The first Hokage's necklace was gleaming in the sunlight, though En didn't notice as he was asleep.